Okay, thank you. Good evening. This is the Board of Selectmen's meeting for September 25th. Would everybody rise for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this evening, we have reading of the agenda, minutes of the regular meeting for September 11th that have to be approved, community relations announcements and open forum, appointments and under appointments and resignation, we have the appointment for the student select person for 2018 and 2019 school year, resignation from the Historical Commission, scheduled appointments, 6:40 p.m., the Cemetery Commission in regards to political signs at the intersection of Main Street and Mugget Hill Road. 7 p.m., we have a Public Safety Building Committee coming forward on the owner's project manager or the OPM for the public safety building. Under new business, we have a change of manager at the Charlton Beagle Club. We have to set the most important thing on the agenda, the trick-or-treat date and time. Special permit application for reduced frontage lot for Boucher Road for lot 45.2. Special permit application, reduced frontage lots, Boucher Road, lots 3, 4, 8, and 9. Site plan and special permit for North Sturbridge Road. Special one-day license request for Stelmack and Brockmeyer wedding. Special one-day license request for Ryan Gardell wedding. Public request, records request, extension of time for Jerry Russell. Open meeting law complaint filed by Mr. Robert Lemansky. Policies for consideration, professional conduct, confidentiality agreement, and safety. And then number 11, Selectman Spiewak has asked for consideration of a proposed BoS policy and transparency in the siting of marijuana facilities in Charlton. Reconsideration of the timing of the marijuana ballot question. Under old business, special town meeting continued. We need to review the articles and close the warrant. We have committee reports, Board of Selectmen policy review, the town administrator's report, and other business unknown at the time of posting. And under that, we have something that came in late. We're going to have the appointment of a facilities technician. That came up after we had the agenda posted. Next meeting announcements, which are going to be the Board of Selectmen's Goals and Objectives meeting, October 2nd at 6:30 p.m. at 4 Dresser Hill Road. We have our next regular Selectmen's meeting, October 9th, right here in the Selectmen's meeting room at 6:30 p.m. We're going to adjourn for executive session to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than for the professional competence of an individual. We're also for number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body in regards to potential litigation for Valley Green Grove Development Agreement. And we are going to adjourn from the executive session to come back into meeting under open session. And after that, we'll adjourn after we have discussed anything that happened in executive session that we can and any decisions that we want to make. So with that, minutes of the regular meeting, September 11th, 2018.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Saffarelli.
I move that we accept our September 11th meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
One moment.
None?
No, just 1 minute.
1 minute? Uno momento. You all set? Okay. Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And I'll be abstaining because I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. So 4 ayes and 1 abstention. And we have under community relations announcements and open forum. Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day, Saturday, September 29, 2018, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. 165 Barefoot Road, Southbridge, Mass. Proof of residency is required. The annual forestry Chapter 61-61A, B, and C renewals are due by October 1st to the Board of Assessors Office. Charlton Flu Clinic, get your flu shot, Tuesday, October 16th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., Charlton Senior Center, 37 Main Street. Please make sure you have all your insurance cards with you. If you don't have insurance, no problem. Nobody will be refused a flu shot. Please get a flu shot. The town hall will be closed on Monday, October 8th, in observance of Columbus Day. The Southbridge Water Department will start its semi-annual hydrant flushing program on Monday, October 1st, 2018, at approximately 9 p.m. and continue during the overnight hours for approximately 6 to 8 weeks between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. Flushing will start in the Westville area and continue easterly throughout town. The procedure will include the cleaning of the reservoir intake screens, flushing accumulated sediments from the water mains, and testing the operation of each hydrant. The department requests that during this period, customers check their water before washing clothes. Customers may also get accumulated sediment in their house laterals and experience some discolored water. This will clear after a brief running of water at the tap. Please contact the Southbridge Water Department at 508-764-3207 if you have any questions. The last day to register to vote for the special town meeting to be held on Monday, October 15th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at the Charlton Middle School is Friday, October 5th, 2018, from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the town clerk's office. And with that, does anybody want to speak at open forum?
I do, Mr. Chairman. So good evening, I'm Todd Gerard, the town's conservation agent. I'd like to discuss this evening Fay Mountain Farms' upcoming Fall Festival. It's going to be this Saturday from 11 to 4, and our theme this year is Come Meet the Farmer. Our farmer is Neil Johnson. It's going to be at Fay Mountain Farm, 12 Cemetery Road. We're going to start off with a pick your own apple, pick your own pumpkin motif for the day. You can get a hayride all the way around the farm. We're going to have a live animals. We're going to have a cider press demonstration at 12:30. This is one of the oldest functioning cider presses in Massachusetts. It's from around 1890, somewhere around there. So, just made the other day. We're going to have local live music with Big John Short and Bugs in the Corner. They'll be playing all day. We're going to have a family fishing event with Mass Wildlife Angler Education Program. This is similar to when we opened the farm on May, so we're doing the same thing just to continue on for the fall. We're also opening a historic tour at the same time, so you can see Ryder Tavern, the schoolhouse, the militia lot, and the back part of the Fay Mountain Farm barn, which is actually on the historic register. We're going to have agricultural demonstrations with the cider and honey and other agricultural applications. We're going to have food vendors. For the children and adults, we're going to have a large corn maze located on the top of the hill that you can also take the hayride up to. We're going to have chainsaw carving done by someone. You're not going to be just anybody chainsaw carving. We're going to have face painting and children coloring contest. So I just highly recommend anybody to come out to Fay Mountain Farm this weekend. You could also sign up for the fall CSA, get your fresh produce for the remainder of the fall, see what Neil's doing on the fall, and see what you can get your family into for the farm. I just really recommend all the residents of Charlton to come to the farm and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add kudos to the Fay Mountain Farm Committee and to the farmer for what that has become since, 5 or 6 years ago, when I was over there picking used oil, used antifreeze, everything that the last guy left. And thank God that Casella has a hazardous household waste day, and they allowed us to bring a lot of that stuff over there. But I know, Todd, you and the committee have put a lot of effort into making that thing go. Before that, it was a struggle to keep the thing moving, and we really didn't know what we were going to do with it. So thank you very much. It is a gem over there.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath.
Mr. McGrath, through the chair. I'd just like to add that if anyone is interested in being a vendor at Fay Mountain Farm, I was there last week, and we are still looking for vendors to come and participate and set up. If you're not sure, if you'd like to do it and you'd like some more information, you can email me, deborah.noble@townofcharlton.net, and I will steer you in the correct direction. I can tell you that last year's event was very well attended, and I expect this year to be even better, and the CSA is just fantastic.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you, Todd. David, you had something?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just wanted to talk about the Milo training. I went to that last week. Having the opportunity to witness it live made me even more thankful that we funded that program. When I went there were 4 officers present: McGrath, Smith, White, and Cargent. Officers McGrath and Smith were doing the training, and officers Cargent and White were participating in the training. And it's an eye-opener, and I think in more ways than one, but to be able to see firsthand the training that the officers are receiving via Milo. It's a large video screen in front of them, and Officer McGrath is running it, and they don't know what's going to happen. And he can control different scenarios as it progresses, from armed or unarmed scenarios, domestic disputes, shooters in the officer or school cafeteria, and the officers engage and actually communicate with each other, though it's live action, and if they have to shoot, it even tracks where their bullets go. So to get that kind of live action, I guess you'd say, training is invaluable. Short of putting them in real harm's way, to have them be able to do that was invaluable. And you learn also, I think I said it was 31 feet, which I think is probably maybe that wall or less. You don't realize how fast things happen until you go to the training and you see how fast stuff does happen. You even know it, and I'm watching them train and how fast the person on the screen pulls a gun, and it's too fast. And people complain about police reactions. It's like they can cross from that wall to me, and by the time they break that barrier of that wall, it's too late for the officer to even get his gun out and react before they can cross that ground with a knife. So it's an eye-opener. And I just wanted to thank the board for supporting the Milo training, because I think it's proving to be invaluable.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, my name is Ed Kochling. I live at 47 Hanson Road. I have a question regarding the VGG project. I'm wondering, I went online to look at some of the plans and the submittals for the project, but I wasn't able to find a financial impact report. Is there one available?
I have no clue. I don't believe that that's any requirement under any of the CCC's information. Is there? Do you know?
I can check.
We can check into it, and if you could please give us your address again. We'll get-
Sure, it's 47 Hanson Road.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm very concerned. Obviously, I live around the corner from the proposed site. I want to make sure that, it's financially going to work for the town. It seems to me that it would be very prudent for the town to have a report that sort of explains how it's all going to shake out. A number of years ago, I had to come down and talk to the board about the landfill closure project with BATG, and as you know, that did not end well for the residents, so we need to avoid that. And I think that having a financial or economic report on this would be very, very beneficial.
Okay, thank you. And we'll look for the information you're looking for.
Just through the chair, and I did let our town administrator know this. I had,
Yeah, can this, well, yeah, go ahead, David, excuse yourself for a minute.
we'll be fast. No, I had people actually ask me, again, when I'm out and about around town, what the financial forecast is with VGG. I know in the past we've quoted certain numbers, but they seem to be all over the place. So if we can get a handle on that, I think it's good for everyone to know, so we're all on the same page.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so he's asking, through the chair, he's asking for an impact study.
Right.
You're asking for a revenue forecast.
Correct.
There's two different things. Okay.
When this all, as it ramps up and to full capacity, what the revenue expectations would be at that time, and whether it takes how many years or whatever, so.
And also like.
Assuming everything moves forward,
Yeah, which I believe that is part of the report that we were given when we did the host agreement.
Well, there are some things that are known, some other things we don't, and I think I had responded back that the full picture is difficult because we have no idea what the sales are, and there's 3% of sales, so even at full capacity, I don't know what the.
So we can give it hypothetical numbers.
Right, just
Yeah,
make
and
some
I'm sure-
assumptions, but.
I'm sure like a low and a high as well.
right, and I know, again, this is way back and going way back, I think it was in May, there was an article about, what we had mentioned about $2 million, that figure.
There's many different pieces that go into that, so, yes,
Right.
I can put you
Exactly,
together a report.
Exactly, just, again, I think it would be beneficial for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want to invite David back in? Sure. Ms. Craver, student select person.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, attached is a letter from William Chaplin, our principal at Shepherd Hill Regional High School, asking the board to accept again grade 11 student Aya Gronandowski as the non-voting student representative for 2018-2019 school year. Ms. Gronandowski was the student representative last year and did a wonderful job. I would recommend the board make the appointment.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer.
I would move that we appoint Anya Grondowski again as the student select person for the 2018-19 year.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, I'm happy to have her back.
Absolutely.
She did a wonderful
She should come up
job.
here right now.
Is she here?
Where is she?
Is Anya here?
No.
No, the board feels incomplete without Anya here.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Craver.
Yes, sir. We have received a letter of resignation from Alan Turmel from the Historic Commission. Mr. Turmel has taken on a position with the Knights of Columbus where scheduled Monday meetings with the Knights of Columbus and the commission conflict. The board should accept his resignation. Should the board accept his resignation, a letter thanking him for his time is in your sign folder.
Do we have a motion?
Through the chair, I make a motion that we accept the resignation with regrets from Alan R. Turmel from the Historical Commission.
Second?
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Ms. Craver.
Yes, sir. Scheduled appointment.
Mhm.
The Cemetery Commission has asked to be placed on the agenda to have a discussion with the board regarding political signs at the intersection of Main Street and Muggett Hill Road, which is in the town right-of-way and is town property. The commission is concerned of the bounty of political signs, which happens from time to time throughout the year, but they feel is particularly ugly during the state and federal election season. They feel this not only takes away from the historical cemetery, but is a serious safety hazard, as it is difficult, if not sometimes impossible, to see around those signs when merging into traffic. The cemetery superintendent and seasonal employees work hard to make all 9 of the town cemeteries look good for the families of those buried there and for the dignity of the deceased. They consider these an insult to those interred. They have carefully cared for the land at this intersection from the stone wall to the roadway for many years. They know permission was granted for these signs during elections, but they would like to go on record as not having given permission and strongly object to the presence of the signs. We forwarded their concerns to the building commissioner to ask if he had a recommendation. He stated that the Board of Selectmen have a policy which states, Board of Selectmen voted to allow nonprofit organizations and candidates for elections to place signs on town property at the corner of Main Street and Old Worcester Road and at the corner of Dresser Hill Road and Muggett Hill Road, with the stipulation that they must comply with zoning bylaw relative to signs. Signs to be removed within 7 days of the election. This policy was approved on February 9th, 1999.
Hi, Jim.
Fine, thank you.
Good.
I'm Donna Nealon. I'm Vice Chair and Clerk of the Cemetery Commission.
I'm James Burlingame. I'm the cemetery superintendent for the town of Charlton.
So Robin reviewed our letter to the board. If that was the only place in town where there were many political signs, we probably wouldn't say too much, even though it doesn't look nice, it's a safety hazard, and makes a lot of extra work for our department. But there is another place, and it's in the center of town, at the end of Old Worcester Road. And I would like to ask that the board review their policy and perhaps amend it to allow only one place that is populated with these signs. At this point, right now, there are signs that, because of the rain or the quality of the signs, there's just sticks there, and the signs have blown away. And we don't dare remove them because we don't have permission to put them there, so we don't believe we have permission to remove them. But it is a definite safety hazard. Many times I've come into the center of town, and I can't see around all those signs to see if somebody's coming Dresser Hill way. So we would like the board to please review their policy and hopefully eliminate those signs at that particular intersection.
Does the board have any comments or questions?
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Deb.
I read this last week when we got our board packet, so I went and took a little drive around town, and you know what? There are other locations, not only in the center of town, just down the street, but also over on Stafford Street, there's a little triangle plot of land, and there's signs there as well.
True.
So there are alternatives, and I do agree with you, it is very unsightly and rather disrespectful to have it right outside the cemetery property. I understand the feeling of you and the families.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other?
Any changes, I imagine, would probably take place after this upcoming election.
Correct.
Just if we make any policies, which I'm open to researching.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. I would just like to make the suggestion that we also make sure that's on the town's website that we're planning on changing this, and that anybody that has any concerns or agreement with changes to the policy, please voice them to the town administrator's office or in the Board of Selectmen's office. Joe?
Mr. Chair.
I would also request that we get a recommendation from the police department and/or the traffic commission.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would ask that the wording be changed, not that we're changing it, but that we're going to discuss the possibility of changing it. That decision hasn't been made.
Correct. Okay.
And
Is that fair and reasonable?
It is very much.
Okay.
Appreciate that. And if you'll let us know when that meeting is so that we can also attend.
Sure.
All right. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
the
your time.
fine work you do there.
Thank you for your consideration. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. The Public Safety Building Committee has been working diligently to procure and recommend to you an owner's project manager, known as an OPM, and a designer to complete Phase 1. To that end, both requests for qualifications have been advertised. The 8 OPM applications were received, and the Building Committee reviewed 4 of them. We had an excellent response and good consultants to choose from. In the end, the Public Safety Building Committee is recommending that you approve Vertex Company from Weymouth, Massachusetts. Their experience includes the Situate Public Safety Complex, Southborough Public Safety Facility, Randolph Police Station, Westwood Fire Station and Combined Dispatch Center, Chelmsford Fire Headquarters, and Nantucket Fire Station, to name a few. Given that the bids for the architect are to be opened October 3rd, we would like to get the OPM on board as soon as possible. To that end, we recommend the board vote to award the contract for the owner's project manager services for the new public safety building pending successful contract negotiations to Vertex Company.
Does anybody have any questions about, well, we need a motion first.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sin.
I would recommend that we award the bid to the Vertex Company from Weymouth, Mass.
Okay.
Pending successful contract negotiations.
Correct.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Now, I just want to say a couple of things because I'm on the Public Safety Building Committee. But, we did have very, very good candidates. Everybody had strengths in different areas. What we found with Vertex is that their strengths were in the public safety building complex or police and fire safety buildings, which are much different than a DPW barn or just a regular office building. There's a lot of different things that are entailed in it. Also, their track record of holding down change orders and going after making sure that the architect and that the contractor are on the same page. I think in several of the projects that we talked to, we actually talked to numerous town officials in each one of these towns. They highly recommended them, that they had saved them money, and when somebody else had made a mistake, they made sure that the town wasn't responsible for that mistake. So it was, we feel very confident with this OPM. So, does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Thank you for that.
Appreciate the history.
Okay. Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Right on time.
Change of manager.
It's exciting, it's happening.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, attached is a request from the Charlton Beagle Club for a change of manager from Tammy Barnes to Jamie Foskett. They have completed the proper paperwork needed, and a successful query review was completed. I would recommend the board approve the change as requested. Once approved by the board, the application will be forwarded to the ABCC for final approval.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Safarovich.
I move that we approve the request from the Charlton Beagle Club as requested.
Second?
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Craig.
Yes, sir. It's that time of the year when the board is asked to set the date and time for trick-or-treating. Chief Maxfield recommends that we celebrate trick-or-treating in the town of Charlton on Tuesday, October 31st, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. I would recommend the board approve the date and times provided. I would also like to invite you to join the employees on October 31st at 11 a.m. when the children from the library come over to the town hall in their costumes and trick-or-treat, and we hand out candy. It's a very nice event.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
I
Safarovich.
move that we set the time and date for trick-or-treating in the town of Charlton to be Tuesday, October 31st, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye. Through the chair, I would also like to encourage the board to come here, if possible, at 11 o'clock on October 31st to hand out candy in costume to the kids. It's a great time to meet the residents and their children, and it's more fun than you could ever possibly imagine.
They're so cute.
They really are.
I remember doing it a couple of years ago, and they just dressed me in costumes, these leftover pieces of costume in the basement downstairs. And it was a mess, but it was so much fun.
Last year, we had a lot of superheroes, I remember.
Okay. Ms. Craig.
Yes, sir. The planning board has provided you with a copy of an application by Gunter LLC for a special permit for one reduced frontage lot, which has frontage on Horn Homestead Road for the purpose of creating a conforming lot for a solar array. The property is identified as Assessor's Map 40, Block B, Lot 45.2, and is in the agricultural district. You are asked to review, and should you have any questions or comments, we must notify the planning board no later than October 2nd. Please note that the board approved the request to remove this property from Chapter 61 at your meeting on July 17th.
We have motion?
Just comments?
Just comments.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Does anybody have any comments? No? Okay, next one.
Yes, sir. The planning board has also provided you with a copy of an application by Gunter LLC for a special permit for 7 reduced frontage lots, 6 of which have frontage on Belcher Road and 1 which has frontage on Horn Homestead Road for the purpose of constructing a single-family home on each lot. The property is identified as Assessor's Map 40, Block B, Lots 3, 4, 8, and 9, and is in the agricultural district. You are asked to review, and should you have any questions or comments, we must notify the planning board no later than October 2nd. It should be noted that this property is in Chapter 61, and they will need to follow the procedure to remove it from the board's, per the board's policy prior to final approval.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Is this open for discussion?
In a minute, yeah. I have just one question. Could we ask the planning board, what's the reason behind, I didn't see a print on this, so I don't know, unless it's here. I'll look at it after then. If we
Okay.
have it, I'll look at it after. I was just curious what the reason is for the reduced frontage lots. So, and, yes, sir, do you have a question?
Sure. Hi, Zach James, resident of 23 Boucher Drive. This and the previous application permit request is part of that Gunther subdivision
Yeah.
piece. So a really brief history of it, as my understanding, is there was an original subdevelopment created that was going to have a piece up on Boucher Drive and then down towards what is now the solar farm. It was supposed to have a connecting drive.
Correct.
That would have a secondary access off of Old Horn Home.
Yes, Old Homestead.
Horn Homestead, sorry.
Yep.
That right now is the only access to that solar farm that has been built but is not active. They were supposed to have built the road out from Boucher Drive as part of that subdivision. That is currently in front of the planning board, is trying to be removed. The subdivision is going to be dissolved, I guess, so they can build homes there.
Right.
Part of that subdivision, there was concessions made by the builder and or the owner of the property to have open space and other properties put aside for the town and public usage. That currently is under negotiations, but was not part of their current new plan. They have repeatedly asked for reduced frontage of both that solar farm property as well as new home lots on part of a new plan that they have not even had the ability to dissolve that piece. I would ask that no decision is made until the town has a new plan in place as to what that subdevelopment dissolution comes up with, because they're really trying to put the cart before the horse.
So the reason this is on our agenda
Yep.
is just so that we can make comments back to the planning board on what, you know, what our questions are with it. So your comments is, you know, and I understand them, have to be taken up down at the planning board as they do their thing with this. The reduced frontage lots are probably being done as what they call approval not required lots, A&R lots, which means there's already an existing roadway and they can put housing on that roadway. All they're asking right now is that they're asking the planning board to review this as reduced frontage lots. The planning board's leverage with them for the open space is going to be when they go to do a subdivision, which they're gonna have to do if they want more house lots up there. That's where their leverage is for the open space. So if you go to the planning board hearing on October 3rd and voice your concerns about what they're doing, that I'm sure they'll be well-received and they'll give you some answers on it.
Yes, many of us have been to these meetings and
But
continue.
that's, all they're asking for us is for comments on this, on the reduced frontage.
And what would the bearing of the Board of Selectmen have on those in terms of comments?
Nothing. When they discuss it,
Yep.
they will bring up that the Board of Selectmen had a question about, like I did, why are they going for reduced frontage lots?
Okay.
Okay?
And the special permit request for the item number 3 for the lot 45.2, did they provide any information on that as well?
Probably
Yeah,
in
the
here.
plans.
It's probably in the plan.
Okay.
Okay? No, probably it is if it's here. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Safarovich.
concerning item number 4, I know that Chapter 61's been under scrutiny lately. Can we ask for a timeline of next time it's going to be taken up for Chapter 61, first right of refusal? And I would recommend sending a comment that not to have any approval unless that is taken care of.
Okay.
We did have a conversation with the planner today on this matter.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Does anybody else have any comments on either one? You can backtrack. No? Okay. All right, Ms. Craver.
The next one, the planning board has also provided you with a copy of a site plan application and a scenic road special permit submitted by Sunpin Solar Development LLC for approval to construct a 5-megawatt ground-mounted solar array on property located off North Sturbridge Road. The scenic road portion of the hearing will be a consolidated hearing with the tree warden regarding the cutting of public shade trees pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 87. The property is listed as Assessor's Map 14, Block B, Parcels 7 and 11.1, and contains approximately 32 acres. The property is zoned agriculture. You are asked to review, and should you have any questions or comments, you must notify the planning board by no later than October 2nd.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Safarovich.
I imagine this project is also not covered by the moratorium that was subdivided before that bylaw went into place? Okay.
Yes.
Through the chair.
Ms. Noble.
I'd like to know how many of these solar projects we have in the pipeline right now, if we could get a number on that, and the amount of acreage that they're proposed to take up.
Speaking off the cuff, I believe 5.
Okay.
And I think this would be the last one.
I'm actually curious, because if they're just applying, then why would they be grandfathered?
They would have submitted some plans already.
They submitted a subdivision plan.
So they're
to
not
lock it
just
in.
starting? They've already submitted their
Yeah,
plan?
they've submitted
Yeah.
their plan. I believe there was 5, because I had asked that question before.
But I'd like to know how much acreage it's going to take up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms.
This is
Craver.
32 acres.
Special one-day license.
Yes. Attached is a request from Henry Stelmach and Sarah Brockmeyer for a liquor license for beer and malt beverages to be used for a wedding on Saturday, October 6th, from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. at 191 Freeman Road, which is a private residence. This request has been forwarded and approved by the Building Commissioner, Fire Department, and Police Department. The only stipulation given was by the Building Commissioner, which states they must maintain 2 open sides of the tent. Per the board's policy, the license, if the day requested is approved, should be issued for 2 additional days for the following reasons. October 5th, to allow delivery of the alcohol to the establishment where no sales will be allowed. October 6th, for use on the approved date and time as listed. And October 7th, to allow for pickup of any unused alcohol, no sales would be allowed. These dates would be reflected on the license. I would recommend the board approve the special license as requested with the stipulation provided by the building commissioner.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Safarovich.
I move that we approve the special alcohol license request from Henry Stelmach and Sarah Brockmeyer from October 6th to October 5th through October 7th, as requested with the following stipulations.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Craver.
Attached is a request from Ryan Gardell for a special liquor license for wine and malt beverages to be used for a wedding on Saturday, October 6th, from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. at the Camp Jocelyn, 150 Richardson Corner Road. This request has been forwarded and approved by the Building Commissioner, Fire Department, and Police Department. Per the board's policy, the license, if the day is requested is approved, should be issued for 2 additional days for the following reasons. October 5th, to allow the delivery of alcohol to the establishment where no sales would be allowed. October 6th, for the use on the approved date and time as listed. October 7th, to allow for the pickup of any unused alcohol. Again, no sales would be allowed that day. These dates would be reflected on the license, and I would recommend the board approve the special license as requested.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Safarovich.
I move that we approve the special license as requested for Ryan Gardell.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. This is about a public records request for extension of time. The request was made by Jerry Russell. Attached is a letter from Rebecca Murray, Supervisor of Records from Secretary Gavin's office, Public Records Division. She is responding to my request to have an extension if and when Jerry Russell accepted the Board of Selectmen's reduction of costs from $1,338 to $300.
Yeah.
This request is quite
On the side of
extensive.
caution.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Singer has recused himself and left the room. This request is quite extensive, and the board reduced the cost by $1,038. Mr. Russell's request included only the following search terms, beginning March 2018: marijuana, 44 Old Worcester Road, Charlton Orchard, Dr. Jeffrey Goldstein, and Valley Green Grow, LLC. The requested emails and/or documents, including drafts evidencing communications to, from, about, or between the following: Jeffrey Goldstein of Valley Green Grow or his representatives, the planning board members and staff, the Board of Selectmen members and staff, the town administrator, the zoning enforcement officer, Kurt Meskis, state officials and employees, fire department employees, police department employees, and any other town official or employee, with the subject matter of any and all drafts relating to zoning amendments concerning marijuana establishments in the town of Charlton, any documents concerning discussion of marijuana regulations or marijuana businesses in Charlton, any electronic documents from Valley Green Grow or about Valley Green Grow, any related interest involving Valley Green Grow, any and all minutes of Board of Selectmen meetings during which selectmen authorized the town administrator to negotiate a host agreement and develop agreement with Valley Green Grow Incorporated, minutes of any executive session minutes during which Valley Green Grow was discussed by selectmen. With that said, the Public Records Division closed the case, assuming that Mr. Russell had agreed to the $300, since neither of us had heard differently. He had not. My letter to the Public Records Division on August 7th stated, once Mr. Russell accepts the selectman's offer to reduce the fee to $300, his request will take time to review for relevance, redact if required by law, and transfer to an electric form. I further stated in my letter, I propose to fulfill the request on a rolling basis and respectfully request an extension of 30 days to complete. This way, he will not be waiting for materials, and we will have time to review the needed records. Ms. Murray explained that since Mr. Russell had not accepted the reduction, it was premature to opine on the extension, which I fully agree. Mr. Russell, on August 16th, appealed the $300 and stated that he understood the supervisor may not compel Charlton to waive the fee. In Ms. Murray's conclusion, she writes, while the town has significantly reduced the estimate, the town did not provide sufficient detail to support the $300 estimate. Accordingly, I find that the town is ordered to explain the $300 estimate in a manner consistent with public records law, its regulations, and this order within 10 business days. If it pleases the board, I will respond in the manner she is requesting. I had assumed that since the board is not limiting the records, only reducing the cost, that all the pertinent information was present in the first two response letters dated July 5th and August 7th. It appears that each letter must include the same information. Thus, I plan to respond that the fee is still $1,338, and the Board of Selectmen is waiving the fee is still $1,338, and the Board of Selectmen is waiving $1,038 of that fee. I will include the original cost estimate. She also says it's not clear if Charlton is under 20,000 people or less and would be allowed to charge for the first 2 hours. I will provide her with the population number. Lastly, even though my previous letter states that we will only sort and redact what is required by law, I will again include that too. I have attached Ms. Murray's letter as well as my 2 previous letters for your information. So my understanding is, and you will hear this from in the next one, you have had me take care of complaints. Generally, the open meeting law after review, when the changes happened, it requires that the board actually have the complaint come before you, and then if you wish to direct me to take care of it, you need to do that at a meeting. So,
So you need us to direct you to take care of this?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Safarov?
I move that we direct the town administrator to take care of the issue presented to us and the recommendation that she presented.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Ms. Noble?
The letter is dated September 12th. That's correct. And it states in her conclusion that you have to reply within 10 business days. We're coming up against that deadline.
Yes, I will have it out tomorrow.
Okay, very good, thank you.
It seems like that you have already had the answers, and it's just they were in previous letters.
And I will point that out.
Point out also, this was our next regularly scheduled meeting.
I will do that
Please.
also.
Thank
Karen,
you.
anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second, hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Johnny, what you did?
What's that?
Johnny, what you did?
Yeah, please, thanks. Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
For the record, Mr. Singer has returned to the room in the
And-
meeting. Go
And
ahead.
it is 7:22.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair, Mr. Robert Lemansky filed an open meeting law complaint on August 27th, naming the Board of Selectmen as the public body in violation and myself as a specific person who committed the violation. He claims that the selectmen wrongfully discussed in executive session that Ethics Commission had closed its investigation and contends that there was no litigation pending by Mr. Lemansky against the town on May 8th. He also claims that the board is required to meet to discuss prior to a response being rendered, as I said before. As you know, at this time, the town has been defending a lawsuit by Mr. Lemansky against Alex McKenzie, who was the water sewer superintendent, water sewer chairman. Mr. Lemansky claims the selectmen should have discussed the Ethics Commission letter, its closing investigation in an open session, since it had discussed these issues in open session in the several meetings at which the issue was previously discussed. He further complains that a letter from the Ethics Division was released that should have been confidential. On August 29th, 2017, after conferring with Town Council, I responded to Mr. Lemansky's, actually, that would be 2018. After conferring with Town Council, I responded to Mr. Lemansky's complaint as follows. Mr. Lemansky, I reviewed your open meeting law complaint regarding the Board of Selectmen meeting held on August 8th. Namely, you were concerned that the minutes in executive session revealed that I reported to the selectmen that we had received a letter from the State Ethics Division that the outcome of the investigation did not warrant public disclosure and the matter was closed. The reason to go into executive session was under the litigation exemption. Contrary to your statement that the town had no litigation with you, please see the below date. The town was notified that Alex McKenzie, the chairman of the Water Sewer Commission, was dismissed from your lawsuit July 19, 2018. You claim that you had litigation against the town, but as you very well know, the town was representing Mr. McKenzie, given he was acting in his capacity as the chairman of the Water Sewer Commission. When the remarks were made, you claim defamed you. This suit was directly related to the illegal sewer line in which documentation was sent to the Ethics Division. In the town's opinion, the ethics referral and the lawsuit you had against the town and Mr. McKenzie were both related to the same thing. In an effort to not discuss litigation where the chairman determined would have a detrimental effect on the town, the Board of Selectmen voted to discuss all new information related to the illegal sewer line in executive session directly because it was related to an ongoing legal suit against the town. I hope this satisfies you and why the discussion was held in executive session, and you are comforted that there was no violation of the open meeting law. Regarding what you are seeking from the town, I would happily post the letter from the Ethics Division to you, clearing you as reported to the Board of Selectmen at a recent meeting. I am sure that would clear up any questions from the public on the outcome of the investigation. The letter sent to the selectmen only stated that it did not rise to the level of public discourse, so if you wish to clear the record, please forward the letter to you, and it will be posted on the town's website for 6 months. Please see the email below from the town's attorney. I have also attached the order to dismiss from the online docket for your convenience. Please let me know if I can assist you further on this matter, and hope you're enjoying the end of the summer. Sincerely, Robin Craver. As you can see, I explained the reason to go into executive session was under litigation exemption. Mr. Lemansky, after receiving my response, sent a letter, see it attached, in which he states he does not believe that the proper procedure was followed to address his complaint, and he is not satisfied with the explanation I sent. He stated that the proper instructions for a public body that receives a complaint is as follows. The chair must disseminate the complaint to the members of the body. Mr. Lemansky did send the copy to all the selectmen on 28th, so you did all receive that. The public body must meet to review the complaint within 14 days. Over the years, and as I said, over the years, the board has delegated to my office the day-to-day operations of the office, and I've always responded to complaints and followed up with the board. The chairman was aware of the response, but it was not given to you to review beforehand as a board. You received the response once it was sent to Mr. Lemansky. In the future, all complaints will be brought to your attention at a scheduled meeting. He also said after a review, but within 14 days, the public body must respond to the complaint in writing and must send the complainant a response and a description of any action the public body has taken to address it. At the same time, the body must send the Attorney General a copy of the response. The public body may delegate this responsibility to its counsel or staff, but only after it has met to review the complaint. And as I've said, we'll make sure we bring this to you going forward. If a public body requires more time to review the complaint and respond, it may request an extension of time for good cause by contacting the Division of Open Government, respond to the complaint. And our office will request extensions as needed. I have always strived to respond quickly to complaints, but we will send the letter if the board does not meet within the required 14 days. This mainly would be problematic during your summer schedule. Mr. Lemansky stated that the Charlton Board of Selectmen has violated the open meeting laws of Massachusetts by inappropriately addressing the closure of the ethics complaint in executive session when it had always been addressed prior to this time in open meetings. This might be true, and most likely was because they were talked about before he filed the suit against the water sewer chairman, in which the town was responsible. He also complained that there was a violation by releasing the letter to me from ethics. We held an ethics training this past week, and I asked Mr. David Gennady, he's from the ethics division, why the letter was marked confidential. I wanted to confirm that the letter addressed to me was marked because the ethics division cannot give information out except to the person making the complaint. Thus, it was addressed to me. He further told me that it's up to the person who receives the letter to share or not. For example, if it was a matter that the public was not a party to, then it could be kept confidential. Or if it had been discussed openly and could add to the body of knowledge, it could be released. That decision could be made by the town administrator. Just because a letter is referred to in an executive session, it does not automatically make the letter confidential. The letter was requested in a public records request, and I released it. Frankly, I believe Mr. Lemansky would be glad it was released, mainly for the reasons he cites in the letter about letting the public know the case was completed. Mr. Lemansky may have preferred that the selectmen discuss the closing of his case, but they certainly were not under any obligation. I suggest quite the opposite. The selectman has no information regarding what happened in the case, as the letter stated. After reviewing the information you provided and conducting any necessary follow-up investigation, we determined that this matter does not warrant a public resolution or the imposition of formal sanctions. All materials relating to this matter by law are confidential. This decision does not necessarily mean your complaint was not without merit. The Commission receives more than 1,000 complaints each year, only a small number of which are resolved publicly." End of quote. That could mean he was found guilty, but the Commission could have sent him a private education letter or some other private settlement. The selectmen have no way of knowing what transpired. For that alone, it would be Mr. Lemansky who would need to produce his letter to really let the public know what the true outcome was. That is why I offered my letter to him and would still do to post his letter so the public would know the outcome. The letter to me from ethics would not vindicate him in the way he hopes. Mr. Lemansky is requesting in his complaint that the Board of Selectmen be required to state at the next regular Selectmen's meeting that the Ethics Commission is closed and the investigation into Mr. Lemansky. I think we're doing that at this time by my reading this, addressing this. He's also asking to post on the Charlton Board of Selectmen's website for a minimum of 6 months the fact that the Ethics Commission closed the investigation into Mr. Lemansky, and it should be required to post for 6 months a copy of the November 15th letter to Mrs. Craver, in which John Sullivan responded to a request of the newspaper that was made through the town administrator, and in which Mr. Sullivan stated, "This letter is response to the request of Deb LaPlaca of the Worcester Telegram and Gazette to name and define instances referred to in our final report where we state allegations are not accurate based on evidence reviewed." I'm not sure what posting Mr. Sullivan's letter would achieve without providing the full report and backup documents that actually went to the AG in the first place. Those have not been released. I suppose the whole issue is now settled and can be released. I will see if I can get a copy of all the documents electronically and post them, and if Mr. Lemansky wants to include the final letter of settlement that he had with the Ethics Commission, we will include that too. I'm glad this issue is behind him, and I would ask what direction the board would like to take on this matter.
That's a mouthful. So what do we have to do in response to Rob's original complaint? Do we have to vote to put it into your hands and have you do this?
Yes, sir.
So with that, do I have a motion?
This was a lot to absorb. So he wants us to put the letter on the website?
Well, in his complaint, he is asking to put the letter on the website.
So that
I
it's
would go
available to the
even-
public?
Yes, I would go even further and put all of the I'll get all the documentation and put it in. I think that would
Mr. Chair?
be more appropriate, and I would also continue to invite him to provide his letter from Ethics, so he can truly be vindicated since it's closed now.
Do any of the documents need to be redacted?
Not at this time. I believe it's over.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we double and triple check
I will be glad
before
to.
we release any of those documents.
Yep.
And
Okay.
Just make sure it's all clear.
They have been released already, and we have been told that they have to be released. The Telegram and Gazette had already said that if we had them in our possession, that we needed to release them, and we did. But we just haven't done it. We have not put them on the website as he's recommending, so. But I will double check again.
All right.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sappho.
I move that we authorize town administrator to proceed with dealing with the open meeting law complaint by Mr. Lemansky as recommended.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you for the very thorough and
Yes.
clear timeline.
Thank you, and I will be in touch with the state to let them know what the outcome of this meeting was.
Thank you.
You're welcome. A lot of backup material to scroll through.
Page
Okay.
87.
All right. Policies for consideration. Attached are 3 policies that the Human Resource Director, Jessica Lorenz, is asking the board to review and approve. These policies were also reviewed by Town Council for his recommendations. They are as follows. Professional conduct policy states that all persons employed by the town of Charlton hold a position of public trust and as a result are expected to conduct themselves in highly professional, ethical, and appropriate manner conveyed through their behavior, attitude, and demeanor. The town employees and elected officials are expected to act honestly, conscientiously, reasonably, and in good faith at all times, having regard for their responsibilities, the interests of the town, and the welfare of its residents and their fellow employees. Employees shall avoid any action that might create the impression of using public office for private gain, giving preferential treatment to any person other than for a legally permissible reason, or lacking impartiality in conducting town business. Employees are expected to adhere to conduct established by the laws of the Commonwealth, including the Mass General Laws, Chapter 268A, the Commonwealth's conflict of interest statute. That's the professional conduct policy. The next one is the confidentiality agreement. This purpose of the agreement shall mean information of or regarding to any person, the town, and/or its personnel, which is not a public record as defined by the Massachusetts law, whether the information may ultimately be disclosed to the public or not, in the possession of or known by the employee as a consequence of the employee's employment with the town. The next is the safety policy, workplace violence, bullying, discrimination, and sexual harassment. It is the policy of Charlton, the employer, to promote a professional and productive workplace in which all employees are treated with dignity and respect. Employees are expected to act in a positive manner and contribute to a productive work environment that is free from harmful, harassing, or disruptive activity. This safety policy will address workplace violence, bullying, discrimination, and sexual harassment. Conduct prohibited by these policies does not encompass lawful acts of self-defense or the defense of others, and nor does it encompass any disciplinary action by the employer which bears a reasonable relationship to the efficient or effective operation of town business. The purpose, intent, and effect of these policies and procedures is to address acts which are illegal under Massachusetts law, rather than to vest new rights or remedies in any person. They are intended as a guide and may be modified or rescinded by the employer at any time. I would recommend the board approve the policies as provided.
We have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Saffaro?
I move that we approve the professional conduct policy, the confidentiality agreement, and the safety policy for workplace violence, bullying, discrimination, and sexual harassment as presented.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, for discussion. Does anybody have any discussion on this?
Through the chair.
Ms. Noble?
We have workplace bullying here, but I don't see anything in the language that addresses cyberbullying. Do we have, I'm wondering, have we drafted a social media policy that addresses that?
We do have a social media policy. We do have some language in it. I will double check that language to make sure it's strong enough and compatible with this.
Okay. I think it's an important issue that, you know, in this day and age, we would be remiss if we didn't address that directly.
Okay. Any further discussion?
And I did have a quick question regarding the source of the content of the language. Where was it taken from, or?
I would defer to Jessica
Jessica.
because she's here.
She's
Tried to
not
call her
here.
today. Do you happen to know?
I do not. She has a wealth of resources at her fingertips.
So one thing I would recommend when we're talking about the first policy, the draft of professional conduct policy, I noticed in line 3, it also includes elected officials. And while I agree that they should, you know, abide by what is before us, I did some homework in most cities and towns. They actually pull out and do something separate, like this is the city of Belmont. Code of Ethics and Conduct for Elected and Appointed Officials. I guess I'd like to see the two kind of remain separate, and again, we can certainly ask for legal advice regarding that.
Well, what we can do is we can approve this for for employees, and then for the elected officials, we can do a separate policy. I think that's the best way probably to take care of that whole thing.
More comprehensive, and
Correct.
as it pertains to elected and appointed officials.
Correct.
I would recommend, while you are going to be doing your goals and objectives, so that is one thing that could come out of it. If it pleases you, perhaps you want to go ahead and approve it as written, so that at least the elected officials are covered by this, and then we start to work on the other one, and then adjust this language.
But again, I question whether that term, the elected officials can be
Put in.
included in this.
The-
Because I haven't seen it, I looked on a lot of town websites, looked over their policies, and I just never seen that combination, so that's why I was questioning the source.
Do you want to wait?
Maybe we can get more input too regarding that particular policy?
We can hold. If somebody wants to withdraw the motion in a second.
I'll change my motion to just include the confidentiality agreement and the safety policy.
Okay. Deb, your second.
I'll withdraw my second and change it to just include the confidentiality agreement and the safety policy, workplace violence, bullying, discrimination, and sexual harassment.
Okay. Any discussion on those two?
Yes, thank you.
Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we'll refer back to Jessica with some of
The
the
professional
questions and
conduct, right?
concerns,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. If you have any information that you have, that you could send, that we could take a look at, that would be much appreciated.
Ms. Corriero?
Yes, sir. Selectmen's feedback has asked for the following two items to be placed on the agenda. Consideration of proposed Board of Selectmen policy, transparency in the sitting of marijuana facilities in Charlton. The policy is the Board of Selectmen to encourage more open and transparent discussions between marijuana facility developers. Municipal officials and local residents shall hold a public meeting on the sitting of marijuana facilities prior to the approval of any host agreement. To allow sufficient time for discussion, this meeting shall be separate from a regular selectmen's meeting. This meeting shall not be combined with or confused with the developer's public outreach meeting, and there should be a meeting solely between the town officials and the townspeople. Notice, the town administrator will be responsible for the advertising of the meeting at least 7 days in advance of the meeting on the town's website and community calendar. The final draft of a host community agreement shall be posted on the town's website at least 14 days prior to a vote on acceptance for review with the opportunity for residents to provide comments. And her second item that she'd like to speak on is the reconsideration of the timing of the marijuana ballot question. For information purposes, we have reached out to the town clerk's office for a definitive timeline to call for a special election. To have this ballot question placed before townspeople, the board would need to call a special election at least 35 days prior to the November election, which would be October 2nd, although I did receive right now in your memo, it says October 2nd. I did receive something from the town clerk today stating October 1st would be her deadline. The town clerk's office has stated that another component to this is the ballots and programming. They have contacted their vendor that prints the ballots and programs the election software required for the machines. They are waiting for a definitive answer from them on an absolute latest they would need the information. Again, that's why the backup to October 1st. They also need to ensure that they will have the ballots in time for both absentee and early voting. The town clerk has stated the following: note that all of this information is pending written response from the attorney at the elections division as well as the ballot programming company. And so I am notifying you of her correction today. She also informed me that a special election for November would cost between $3,500 and $4,000.
Okay, with that, Karen, I know you and I had talked a little bit, on getting this stuff on the agenda, and I'm fine, and here we are. Go ahead.
Yeah. So regarding the policy, I just want to disclose that the language, much of the language was taken from the pending legislation. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that that kind of mirrors that legislation, that language. And I look at this as in an effort to increase transparency and restore public trust. This would be a good step to take. And I open this up to discussion. Well, I
Mr.
think the
Rath?
chair could have to do that.
That's all right. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Joe.
I think it is a good policy. Just one question I have is the last sentence of the first paragraph of shall not be confused with the developer's public outreach meeting. It's not clear if the developer would be allowed to present materials. I know that to have a good discussion, I think what we did last time, having the developer have a presentation meeting, having panels and be able to disclose to the public what they're doing, present what they're doing on the different facets of it, I think leads to a better discussion prior to an open meeting.
I think having the information there, or even someone there to answer questions, wouldn't be a bad idea. This is just more about having the conversation with the townspeople and the local elected officials, so they can take that information and then use that as part of, in negotiations.
Right. So
And as you know, just Joe, and I think you know this, but the entity is required by law to hold
Right.
an outreach meeting. And I think
Exactly.
it's 6 months
Right.
before they get their license?
So it just,
or-
Ms. Bubeck, this way it's
Yeah.
written, it almost seems like it's not clear if they would be allowed to present, because it says that it would be confused with the developer public outreach meeting.
Mhm.
So I'm just a little foggy on that. I would agree with you that are acceptable for the meeting shall not be combined with, but or confused with part is a
Yeah.
little
But
restricting.
just, we didn't want to, it was like, I didn't want to come across as we were being redundant, doing the same kind of meeting twice,
Right.
so.
Well, I just think that the information they would present at those meetings would be helpful for those discussions. A lot of questions could be answered prior to questions, because a lot of people have general questions about it. And having that prior to any larger discussion, I think would smooth the process over.
David?
Yeah, so just wanted to comment, I agree, I think it's a good idea. I don't have a problem with the wording in that we know that they're required to have their own hearing anyway, and it should be on their own and their initiative, not a part of ours. I'll point out we have a lawyer present, so if somebody wanted to ask, perhaps he could say whether the wording should be changed or not.
So I just have a suggestion, okay? This is the first run at this, okay? My suggestion is to have everybody take a real hard look at it. We have policies and objectives meeting coming up. Maybe have some more discussion about it there, and then hand it over to legal counsel. I agree. I believe it's a good thing to do to clarify how we're going to handle these in the future. And I commend Karen for putting the effort forth to come up with this. But I think there's a lot there, and I'm not comfortable with voting on anything tonight like this until we have further discussion on it and then run it by legal counsel, only because of contract obligations and stuff that happen also. Where my questions particularly, Karen, are when you're doing contract negotiations, that takes place, in executive session when we discuss contracts and stuff. This would be after you would lay the groundwork as to where you are with it.
This is before.
So you would.
This is to have this, so let me just, again, to clarify. So
Okay.
you have the meeting, you know this entity would like to, seeking a host agreement. You have the conversation with the townspeople before you get into the
Okay.
deep negotiations, because you don't know what you don't know.
All right.
And you could use what you learn from the townspeople
Mhm.
to negotiate the best deal for the town.
Okay. All right, thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Just one comment.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'd like to suggest that as we work through this, we keep the Marijuana Advisory Committee a part of this whole process, so that they can be involved and when you say town officials, that committee could be part of those town officials to be part of this meeting.
And you bring up a good point. And I know way back when, I think it was my first meeting, we had discussed the Marijuana Advisory Committee being expanded. We never did take that vote, did we?
No, ma'am.
To be all-inclusive, because right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's just for Healthwise, which is now called, come on, I don't remember. the
Green
name.
Gold.
Green Gold, Inc.
Correct, so
Right.
we'd have to
Yeah.
For today,
do
that's
that
their
as
name.
well.
Yes. So again, that's something we could take up at our goals and objectives meeting, would be to expand the scope of the Marijuana Advisory Committee. Because this board would have to make that suggestion.
Does everybody agree that's a good course?
Yeah.
Okay.
At our next meeting, I'd like to take it up.
Sure. All right. Okay. Next,
Second part.
second part of it. Reconsideration of the timing of the marijuana ballot question.
And I'm bringing this back for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the situation is very fluid, and we've learned a lot since making our initial decision as to when it should go to ballot. We have the AG rulings now, and I know, because I've been on all the emails with all of you, that we are now getting emails from people who, on both sides of this issue. And in an effort to put this to bed as quickly as possible, I'm suggesting we go back and reconsider putting this on, or having the dual, I know we can't put it on the same ballot, but having it in November rather than pushing it off to May.
So I'm gonna, well, I'll defer, let the rest of the board members speak first. Go ahead, David.
Well, I just wanted to ask if that was a suggestion or a motion.
You can make a motion and then have discussion afterwards about it. That's.
Or we can discuss.
Or you can discuss it, whichever way you would like to do it.
Well, I'd actually like to discuss it if,
Okay.
David, unless you'd like to make a motion? No,
Fine.
anyone else? And then,
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, my position hasn't changed. To me, it doesn't really matter, I think, which side someone's on. It's a benefit to them in the community to have it in November. I think the town's legislative body acted, they followed the rules. That was their intent. I think B, the larger turnout would be, I think, a more fair representation. And I don't think you'll get that in May. I think in May, we're lucky if we get 400, maybe 500 voters will turn out. Whereas in November, it's not a presidential, we're not going to get 3,000 or 4,000. But we could see 1,500 to 2,000 people, which I think would be a better representation.
Okay. Anybody else? So I'll state my view. Okay, my view has not changed since before, and my reasoning is the same as it was before, except that the facts of what has happened has actually taken place. We were told by council that we would probably end up in litigation over this, and we did end up in litigation. It's been filed. And it's friendly litigation. We're asking the court or the proponent is asking the court to give a ruling on whether the town can do what it's doing with the general bylaw. So, and we've all heard or at least seen some of the things from council about this, and they believe that the proponent is gonna prevail in court, just because there is case law about this. So I'm not in favor of moving this to November 4th and expending the funds at that point in time when we will probably, or we could, let's be fair about this, I guess. We could hear from land court that you can't do with the general bylaw what you're trying to do when you've had a zoning bylaw on the books when the proponent came forward with this. So that is why I am not in favor in putting on November 4th.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Safarovich?
I still hold my position before for three main reasons. One, the pending litigation. It would be great to actually have a court-determined outcome of what's going on. We still believe that town business should be held at town meetings. And while I do believe that there'll be higher turnout, but I feel like that's not the most sound logical reason to have something during that, where a lot of times people who wouldn't come out to a town meeting, a town election, might actually come out to a town election and actually care about the town issues. And if this is an issue that affects people and people care about it, they'll come out and voice their opinions on it. And so a lot of times, a lot of people will get confused when you put another ballot along with the state election. People who are just coming out to vote for the midterms have this other thing that they weren't aware of.
Two comments.
It's the same.
I agree with Mr. Safarovich that town meeting is the place for town business to be conducted, but I feel that it was. And that's why I think November is when we should be acting. That's my first comment.
Town
My
election,
second-
I'm sorry, the annual town election for town business.
Oh. My second comment is regarding friendly litigation. I'd rather not use that term, I don't believe that. I don't believe any
Never heard of
litigation
it.
is friendly.
There's two ways to go about things. I think in the interest of everybody, what the proponent is trying to do, get land court to give us a ruling on this now, is probably a lot quicker than having a vote at an election and then having to go back to court again.
So,
Because my feeling is it would end up in land court one way or the other.
just a quick question. So,
Go ahead.
first, if we did have a vote in November and that wasn't settled by then, wouldn't the courts just nullify that after the fact, so you can't do that, we found it's not legal, sorry?
Yes, they could.
So we could still have the vote in November regardless of what the courts decide. And the other comment or slash question is, we have a very short window of opportunity if we have to have it done by October 1. That being said, are we expecting the land court to hand down its decision prior to October 1? If we are. So, all right, so yeah, if we were, I'd say we can still vote to have it based upon. And if they're not going to find by then why would we move ahead anyway, knowing that if the courts decide after the fact that that's not allowed or legal, they'll simply nullify it, but we don't lose the opportunity to act, where if we do hold off, and then it turns out that the decision is the opposite, we've now lost that opportunity.
And through the chair, I go back to, we know we'll get a higher voter turnout in November. The residents, again, have done everything in there, they've done everything by the book. And to make that vote wait till May, I think honestly seems unreasonable. The other thing is, we did take the advice of our attorney, which, I know we feel differently about, and we still have litigation. And I go back to looking at the pros and cons, and I guess to throw their own words back at them, I look at it as a declaratory action, and it's not contentious at all. We just want to find out. Again, I go back to whatever side of the fence you're on, as an elected official, it's so important we truly take the pulse so we know how, the pulse of the community, so we know how to move forward. And I just see it as, let's figure this out sooner rather than later.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Sure. Absolutely, Joe.
Appreciate it.
And I would just like to ask, we've kicked this horse pretty hard. Anybody that comes up, I would like new information or new insight, not the same stuff that we've been, and this isn't directed at you, Joe, I'm just saying,
I have no plans to rehash this.
thank you.
Joe Spilak, 90 Osgood Road. I am a member of the Finance Committee, however, I'm not here representing the Finance Committee for disclosure purposes. I have a simple question. You have litigation pending. If the litigation goes in favor of the proponent, would you deny the voters of this town an offer of voting? You voted to put it on the May ballot, but you seem to be indicating tonight, excuse me, that if the land court rules in the proponent's favor, that you would, cancel the vote?
Most likely, because there would be no sense to go to
Through the chair.
go ahead.
Let's not think of this as the court ruling in one person's or one entity's favor or another. Let's think of this as getting clarification from the judge as to the validity of the general bylaw, because that's what it is. It's neither good for one or bad for the other. It's a matter of clarification. That's how I view it, and that's the purpose for filing the case in land court, is so that the judge can give a definitive ruling as to whether or not this general bylaw will stand on its own.
And then I would add then, whatever outcome, if we need to amend the vote that would be voted on come May, we would change it. If instead of a general bylaw, it would be a zoning bylaw that the town would vote on during the annual meeting. Whatever is more appropriate and actually doesn't put the town in legal dire straits, you know, we still have an obligation to make sure we take care of the town responsibly.
Through the chair, remember what I just got done saying. We need to, no matter how this shakes out, in my opinion, we need to really find out what this town wants to do. And to short-circuit that, I think, is wrong on many different levels. And as Selectman Singer had mentioned, moving forward, if we find out, you know, whatever happened, whatever was approved isn't legal, then we will rectify it. And that's where and if you look at the history of the votes, what the rulings of the ruling of the AG to date, and everything I've been doing a lot of reading, they want the local people to figure it out themselves, and they really are respecting that. Every decision they've made so far indicates that, and you can look it up in the literature. That's really what's going on at the state level. They want you to figure it out, and then if you're you cross the line, then they tell you, that, as is the case when the AG took the language out for one of the articles, some of the language.
And Joe Allen, did you have any other questions?
I would just state that I've never seen a court case where it's, I'll agree with Mr. Singer, it isn't friendly, and I don't believe that if the judge rules one way or the other, that it's a definitive answer, because what's gone on at the Attorney General's level in this state, where 1 week you could ban medical, the next week you couldn't, there's a lot of confusion going on, and I would just state that I don't feel that any judgment that occurs anytime in the next 2 years is going to be definitive. And I would appreciate that we all respect what the voters of the town have done and requested us to do.
And I'll just go into this. The problem is that you're dealing with zoning. Okay? You have contracts that were in place before the zoning article went on, okay, on the books. Then we passed a zoning article that went on the books, and people didn't like what the zoning article said. So now they passed a general bylaw in which they're trying to do zoning enforcement with a general bylaw, which council has told them. And that was this discussion at the special town meeting. The thing with land court is, land court deals with zoning bylaw. Zoning bylaw is there to protect proponents from many different things, but one of them is for not in my backyard, okay? And that's exactly what this boils down to, okay? They are protected under the zoning bylaw, and that's why it's in land court. The land court judge is going to make the decision whether the zoning bylaw is the method with which you are going to handle marijuana policies. The problem that we run into here in Charlton is that we had no other laws on the books, okay, before these people came forward, when there was a zoning bylaw put in place, and they're protected by that. They're grandfathered in. And that is why it's in land court. That's why we want everybody wants the land court to make their decision.
Again, I'll just reiterate, I find it somewhat disappointing that you are extremely concerned with how the land court feels, but not that concerned with how the residents want to vote.
But I think that is the wrong way to think about this, Joe. I'm not thinking about I'm not putting land court's opinion ahead of how I feel about the town. I think the amount of time that I spent on different town boards, and everybody that wants can make faces out there. I haven't seen any of you people volunteering on any of the boards or commissions in town to the extent that a lot of the people sitting up here have, okay? I usually don't make comments like that, but some of the things that have taken place in this have gotten under my skin a little bit. I think that some of the things that have taken place are childish, I expect to see them from junior high and high school students. I think that the board has tried to do exactly what is right for the town and keep us out of financial danger. Whether you like the decisions that we've made on the marijuana enterprises that have wanted to come in town, we have done it with, I think, for the most part, what we thought was in the best interest of the town. And did we make a misstep in the order in which we did things? Absolutely. But I will tell you this. For the length of time that I've been spent on the planning board, I've had a lot of people that they don't want things in their backyard. And I understand that. And I'm compassionate about it, okay? But there's laws that rule this stuff. And it's the zoning bylaws, it's the subdivision rules and regulations of the town, okay? These people played by all the rules that the town had. And the reason they have grandfathering and they have the zoning bylaws is that so people can't pull the rug out from underneath other people once they make an investment in the town and to move forward. And that is why, Joe, I'm saying we're going, my opinion, okay, the board can vote whichever way they want, but my opinion is that land court is going to make the ruling and tell us whether we should move forward with the vote in May. And then whatever takes place, if land court says that, that's, you can use this bylaw to exclude these people from doing business in the town of Charlton, that's fine, okay? But I believe that the land court decision has to come before we have a vote. Because one way or the other, we can have the vote in May and we're still back at land court because they're going to appeal it. Get the appeal out of the way now, find out what's going on, and then go to that. That's my opinion. And I appreciate everybody listening. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
So I'm not going to waste everyone's time by repeating what I said earlier or my position. I'm just going to point out that I know that our town in the past has taken action regarding bylaws, et cetera, that later were found to be strangely unlawful in Massachusetts, even though the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said it was federally legal. But the point is, we took the action anyway, and the courts made their own ruling later. I just think that also comes into play here, because we do have a precedent where we've taken action. I still think benefits both sides, and the court's going to make their ruling later, and they can let stand or nullify the action.
And my last comment, if I may. John, I respect your comments, always do. But I have to say, you mentioned not in my backyard. I think, again, that's why I'm asking, us to move it to November, because I think you will find out this is not about just people complaining in that particular area. I've talked with people all over this town, and there's far more people out there. But again, we will never know unless we put this ballot question forward. And that, to me, is the most important thing I need to know, so we can set the course and move forward at a rapid pace then. But we need to know. And we will not unless, and to find out that we may not bring this to ballot, depending on land court, again, I just don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'd like to simplify things. To me, it just makes sense to move it, get it done with, take the pulse of the community, and then move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Joe and then Bill.
Yeah, I do want to take a moment to thank, there are volunteers and people who put time and effort into the community, so I do want to thank you for your work for the town. And I am happy to see a lot of public engagement and people caring about their community and people coming to meetings where usually we'll have one person at most at these meetings. And I do want to thank you for your involvement. Has it gotten to a point where it's been not very professional? I think so. But I still want to thank, all the hard work that people put into the town at all levels and all committees. So I just want to take a chance to thank you.
Just one more thing, John.
Ms. Gilbert.
The gentleman who just spoke, he talked about the decisions coming out of the AG's office as being very fluid. And that's absolutely correct. Those AG decisions are very fluid, and when the AG issued her letter, she said that the office approved it based on their limited scope of denial. And they suggested in their letter that it receive further review, the question. And it's also been my experience, having been involved in the law in one aspect or another for about 20 years now, maybe more, that when a judge issues a decision, they don't waffle on it, they don't change their mind, that's their decision, and you have to deal with it and go with it from there. There will be no fluidity in that judge's decision. That judge's decision will be absolutely final, and we will have absolute clarification, which is really what everybody wants, perhaps in a different manner, but we all want clarification on this issue, because you know what? We are on the cutting edge of drafting new laws. We're setting a precedent here in this town. We want to make sure we do it right.
Okay, Bill?
Thank you, Chairman. Bill Borowski, 69 Haggerty Road. Just very briefly, as I'm somewhat blunt to do, I want to take a slightly different tack just for a moment.
Go ahead.
Ignoring the general bylaw for a moment. So let's just take that off the table. I know there's been discussion, I think it may be even next on the agenda, around what the fall town meeting warrant is going to be. And I believe at one of the last discussions, there was, in fact, a larger discussion regarding zoning bylaws around, specifically around marijuana for the October meeting. I think by its very nature that would exacerbate the need to have a town meeting, a town election, or the referendum in November, immediately following the October town meeting. Because if that in fact passes, to me, logically, it would say that as a fast follower, you should have the ballot referendum to discuss this. So in fact, it could kill potentially two birds with one stone, because if, in fact, the land court rules in favor of the general bylaw, even though I said I'll take it off the table for a moment, by having it in November, you have clarity. VGG has clarity. Anyone else has clarity and doesn't have to wait 6 months. If, in fact, the general bylaw is said to say, no, you can't do that because you need to have zoning, well, as of October, potentially, if it passes, we will have zoning on the books, as long as it's approved by the AG. So, time-wise, having a fast follower referendum immediately after a zoning bylaw, I think is a very logical approach, because I don't understand why you would need to cancel a referendum and then reschedule a referendum because you had the bylaw. At the end of the day, it's a twofold process. You need a bylaw passed, and you need, again, this is for a ban, and you need a referendum ban. Having it November, regardless of the general bylaw, that will at least back up a potential October zoning ban. So, to me, it only makes much more sense to have November.
No, Bill, because we're talking about the past zoning bylaw that's already on the books. Whatever we do with zoning now is not going to affect VGG.
No, I'm not even discussing VGG.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm talking about those who are applying on a go-forward. So, there's been such tremendous talk around VGG, but we've already heard around this next iteration, potentially a Dresser Hill, and I don't know, there may be others, I mean, I really don't know. And nor should I know, quite frankly. But the reality is that by having potentially a new zoning bylaw, or banned zoning bylaw, to remove everything come October, then why would we not have a fast follower referendum vote that will directly apply to a potentially an October passage? And again, I know we're getting some legal nuance and procedural nuance, but we have such an emphasis upon the general bylaw. But if we make changes at the October town meeting to restrict and ban via a zoning bylaw, that's going to impact anyone who applies or would want to apply after that. So why would we wait till May if we're talking around potential changes in October?
No, what I believe, Bill, is that, and thankfully the planning board has finished their work and they put a lot of hard work into it. It is the next thing up on, on the agenda for the meeting. But I believe that goes back to the general bylaw, okay? You're putting zoning bylaws onto books to do what you want to do with the general bylaw. And I think it does go back to the proponent that wants to go over at Charlton Orchards, because I believe the intent of the general bylaw was to keep keep that proponent from moving.
Right, but if we don't even talk about them, I'm talking about ones on a go-forward.
On a go-forward, I believe that.
October zoning would,
But I believe on the go-forward already, the board has said that they're honoring the existing zoning bylaw that's on the books now, which tells us we can have, and I have to defer, I think it's 2 and 2, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, that's the way I read
So, it's the planning board's zoning bylaw that's coming forward is to more or less replace the Article 27, which is what I'm going to say, because of some of the things that they didn't like in the Article 27 zoning bylaw.
is it a full rescission to remove and ban
I
retail?
have-
And again, I know I'm jumping the gun
I would have to-
unfortunately, but.
Yeah, I would have to look. I believe that's what their intent is.
Because if that's the intent, then to ban it, you still need a referendum to say that that ban is okay.
No. So I'll let Joe and then.
Again, I could be
counsel.
mistaken, it's just, that's always been the issue.
So I guess I'll lead into the council because I trust his judgments on this. For a referendum vote, because we're talking now about a zoning bylaw and a general bylaw, would that require 2 different questions on the ballot because they're separate laws?
That I suppose ultimately gets to the gist of my question or statement is, what, is it different language for a ballot referendum for May as opposed to a zoning bylaw?
I was trying to keep you out of this.
No, that's
And
fine.
again, this is really getting into the weeds of like politics and law and nuance, so.
As long as we were talking policy, I was going to sit it out, but maybe I can just help with the conversation a little bit.
Identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jonathan Silverstein, Special Counsel. So I guess just a couple of things. First of all, as I understand it, or last I heard, my understanding was the planning board was looking at amendments to the zoning bylaw. My understanding had been they had decided not to pursue a zoning ban. I could be wrong, but that was my understanding. Were a zoning ban to go on the warrant and were to pass, then the Board of Selectmen would have to decide if and when to put that zoning ban before the voters. They wouldn't be able to make that decision after an October 15 town meeting for the November 6 election because state law requires that the Board of Selectmen notify the town clerk at least 35 days prior to the election of the election. So there wouldn't be a way to have a zoning ban ballot question at the November 6 election.
Why could they ask for that now, and that if the zoning ban failed in October? Again, this statement, by the way, my assumption is predicated on the fact that there is a zoning ban coming up in the October town meeting. If that's not the case, then I can stop talking right now, quite frankly. It's just, at the last meeting, I thought that was a discussion point, that there was going to be, a ban.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's on the website. The planning board set it up on their website, it's not a ban, they have changed the language regarding cultivation. They have not changed the language regarding retail or medical, those are 2 and 3.
And their meeting is tomorrow
They have
night.
not banned anything.
Their meeting is
Okay, so
tomorrow night.
then, quite honestly, because I thought at the last meeting that we had discussed, sorry, John,
No, that's fine.
that I believe was Ms. Craver, and again, please forgive me if I'm incorrect, that there was a proposal on the board that there was going to be a zoning ban on the October town meeting. And now I'm hearing tonight that's not the case. And if that's, I think if that is true, then that's a surprise, not only to myself, but many people at home watching this, as well as in this room.
So I found it here, Bill. They want to amend the marijuana bylaw adopted on Article 27. It's not a brand-new bylaw.
So there is no rescission, there's no ban for zoning.
No, what they're doing,
Well, that's remarkably disappointing. And again, that is not directed at this
So,
point,
what the-
but that is remarkably
what they're
disappointing.
doing is, and you have to get into, as you say, the weeds, but just looking at the table, it looks like they took out special permit in all the classifications and they put no.
Okay.
Okay, so they basically are saying, you know, it is they're doing it.
Absolutely.
They're doing it by the.
I think except in the industrial.
In the
And
industrial,
the industrial,
yeah.
correct.
If that's the case, I actually should have, then I want to apologize to the board. I should have held my comments until the next agenda item. But again, just to go on record, I am incredibly disappointed, thanks, Joe. I am incredibly, not at this board, but I'm incredibly disappointed in that decision. I think many people, both in this audience and at home, had the expectation that there was going to be a zoning ban on that October town meeting. And the fact that it's not, again, I think is just another example of, not this board, but another example of town government as a whole has fallen down on this, because many people left this last meeting assuming there was going to be a ban. And the fact that there's not, again, I know this is not your issue, but that's terrible. But again, thank you for your time, and I actually apologize for wasting it, quite frankly.
Back to the original discussion that we were having.
And just a quick question, wouldn't it make more sense to hold this particular warrant article to May, because it requires a 2/3 vote, and then have the ballot question first? We know we're going to have more people turn out to vote at the November election versus at a May town meeting, or, I'm sorry, at any town meeting, quite honestly.
That's up to the planning board.
And just for clarification, the planning board does have a meeting tomorrow
So,
at 7 PM.
Steve?
Yeah, Steve Corona, 17 Old Worcester Road. From what I understand, I read the AG's response to those two requests, and they didn't deny either. They actually approved both, Article 27 and the bylaw. They changed the wording from Article 27, removing the part that said you'd have to transport you can't keep anything on site overnight type of thing. But the Attorney General chimed in and said both are legal, and they would, legal options. So I don't really understand why we're waiting for the proponent to get through land court when the citizens have a question
Okay, so.
in front of
go
the
ahead,
town.
Dave.
Just for clarification, I was under the impression that the decision came down, it was not legal to make a business have to remove everything every night from their premises.
That's what they did.
That part was not legal, but the rest of it was. And from that special town meeting, Article 2 was also approved, hands down. They said they wouldn't have, the AG said they wouldn't have a problem with it. I read it, I didn't bring it with
That's
me.
not true.
No, well, but what the AG looks at, I believe, is when they looked at the general bylaw, they look at just they have tunnel vision, and they look just at the general bylaw for the legality of the general bylaw. They don't look at any actions that the town has taken previous to the general bylaw, or if there was a zoning bylaw on the books before.
They actually did in that case, because they compared both of them at the same time. They
No,
were
no.
looking at Article 27 and the bylaw that was passed at the special town meeting.
But they don't, they look at each one individually. They do not look at both of them, how they interact with anything that has taken place in town previous to that.
I find it a little bit of a travesty that we're now, the decision now that what you're recommending is that we wait until the proponent, the developer, gets through land court. So now the developer is running the town of Charlton, or do we actually have a voice? Do you guys, do we, does anybody, or?
So Steve, as much as I like your comments, okay, yes, that's my personal opinion. We're still discussing this up here. We haven't taken a vote on it yet. But my personal opinion is listening to counsel, what he told us at the special town meeting when we voted in the general bylaw, okay? And what he told us sitting up here probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, that this was probably going to head to court, and it's probably going to head to land court. And that's where we are. So far, counsel's been pretty accurate, okay?
He's been very accurate. He actually mentioned like 2 months ago that the AG probably would support a bylaw in this case, and he was correct.
And he explained the reasons at that point in time why. They are very pensive about trying to change what the town wants to put on the books, okay? And they would rather let it go to the courts and have them settle it, and that's where it is now. So, and, that's,
I would just really wish you guys would reconsider and put the will of the voters first and put it on the November ballot. That's all I can, it would be an end all.
Okay, thanks.
We'd all go to bed, we'd wake up in the morning, we'd know exactly what happened.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I say something?
Sure, come on up, Deb.
Well, just for point of clarification, we're waiting for a decision from the land court judge, who will make a decision on the direction the town goes in, not the proponent who filed the lawsuit. We're waiting for a decision from an impartial judge on the legality of the matter.
Yes, sir.
Name's Stephen Pierce, 189 Dresser Hill. My concern about bringing this vote up to November ahead of the land court's decision, AG gives an opinion. They don't actually have any legal weight other than their background and education. A court gives a legal position, and it's binding. If we pass this vote to November, and we vote on Article 2, does that in any way set us up for causing damages to the proponent, where they would actually be able to, at that point, have an unfriendly litigation for us?
So, I would just say that's a future comment, to be honest with you, we still have to talk to council about a number of things. That's going to take place tonight in executive session, and we'll see where things go from there. But, right now, that's a theoretical. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, Steve, is just move on with this. I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. And everybody that commented tonight. Kristen, as long as it's fresh, Kristen.
Very brief.
Thank you.
It's very brief, and it's sort of, I don't think, been covered. It's more in your direction, but Kristen Castigian, Carroll Hill Road. So there are lots of communities in Massachusetts that have done a moratorium or a ban or something for recreational, but you can't affect
Okay, Kristen.
medical. No, it's quick.
No. I'm
It's-
going to put a stop to this now, okay?
I just want to point out that you need the zoning.
Only
for the other
because,
facilities.
the reason I want to put a stop to this now is we're discussing reconsideration of an article. We're not rehashing this whole thing about the zoning
Well,
and
you
stuff
talked
like
about
that.
zoning, so I'm just clarifying that you need the zoning.
I'll give you one more minute, go ahead.
I
Please.
appreciate it, thank you. So my point is, I believe that communities require some marijuana zoning because we allow recreational marijuana establishments. If we didn't have any zoning, where would they go?
But, okay, so Kristen, my discussion was on the general bylaw that passed with
Right,
zoning.
which only affects one type of business.
No. We're discussing the general bylaw going to a vote right now.
Okay.
We're not discussing the zoning bylaw or anything else. The reason zoning came up in my discussion is because we're talking about the general bylaw and how the zoning bylaw fits in with the general bylaw and why we're in land court. That's what we're
understand.
discussing right now. What I'd like to do is go back to Ms. Spiewak's question about, reconsidering this, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Very quick.
Mm-hmm.
Noreen Johnson-Smith on Dresser Hill Road, and I appreciate, I've been to the planning committee, planning board's most recent meeting. Appreciate the efforts to clean up the language so that that becomes clearer and more in line with what the state had originally authorized. I would just ask, I don't really understand why waiting on a vote that the citizens had already approved to go to ballot would benefit the town relative to any judicial decision-making that happens, whether that happens within the next 6 months or the next year or the next 2 years. Those decisions can take time, and, one can only guess at what's going to happen in the courts. So is there some other rationale for waiting beyond what we have an opportunity to just dispense with it and at least take the temperature and direction of the town and the citizens as a whole?
And to elaborate a little bit further, expand on what Ms. Johnson just said, I feel like we shouldn't base our decision on hypothetical outcomes. And if we legally can do this in November, why not?
Right, there's so
And because the citizens have done everything,
if I'm not mistaken, we can legally do this as long as there's proper notice at any time. And I still hold firm that the town business should be at town elections, especially something this big.
So I'm gonna ask right now that we move forward with this. If somebody wants to
Thank you.
make a motion, a second, thank you. If somebody wants to make a motion, a second on this, feel free.
David and I would not be allowed to make a motion because of the way we voted. The motion would have to come from, because that's Robert's rules. We could second, but we could not
Something
make.
I didn't know.
Well,
Thank you.
I
Thank
know, well, see, take my lead, help me. Let's vote on it. Someone make the motion on that side of the table. Joe, you said at town meeting, you would support.
Mr. Chair.
I'll make a motion.
You wouldn't get in the way.
But I gotta find the language. What page was it on? Okay.
Ms. Wack, I think you're putting words in my mouth.
I think not. I have the
I would
tape.
not get in the way. I think town business, Mr.
Can we
Chair.
duke it out?
While Deb's looking up her stuff, go ahead, David.
So I will just reiterate, I use that instead of repeat, because I don't think I said it tonight. While she's looking that up, I don't believe it matters what side of the fence you're on this vote. I made the comment at a previous meeting that rules were followed, intent was clear. And I think it's very important for this board to act in a non-arbitrary fashion and not decide which rules we want to follow and when we choose to follow them and in what time frame. That being said, I will go back to, I think it benefits both sides to have it in November. And I'll repeat that, yeah, rules were followed and the intent was clear. And I think it's upon this board to act.
Okay, thanks, David. Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we reconsider the timing of the marijuana ballot question, also known as Article 2.
I can second that.
Okay.
And this-
Okay.
And just for point of clarification, Selectman Singer, you say both sides of the issue? I would argue that there's far more than two sides to this issue.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and is there any further discussion? Because I believe,
Last thing, just, again, I think if this goes through, we are taking a huge step forward to restore public trust. And I think everyone around this table, we work hard. I think we all know we need to work on that.
all right,
Ask for clarification.
sure.
The motion to reconsider is simply a motion to put a reconsideration on the table, or the motion to reconsider is to reconsider and place it on the November ballot?
No, the motion was just to reconsider.
Just to reconsider, okay? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Well, you would reconsider, and then you would, once it up past reconsideration, you would then vote on when you want to set it.
Clarification?
Go ahead. And I'll try.
So we're going to do in two steps what could be done in one. So there's a motion to reconsider the issue, but that doesn't require any action be taken. So then we would have to have a second motion made by somebody else to actually then have the vote in November.
May I amend my motion?
Feel free.
Thank you. I would amend my motion and change the wording to this. Reconsideration of the timing of the marijuana ballot question, also known as Article 2, to change the townwide vote from May until November of this year, 2018, to take place during the midterm elections here in the town of Charlton.
You amend your second?
I do.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just a thank you.
You're welcome.
Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
3-2. Okay. So it still goes May 1st, or May the 1st, the annual town meeting in May. Okay. All right. Special town meeting.
As you know, special town meeting calendar was approved at your meeting on September 11th, 2018. Tonight, you are scheduled to, 1, consider special town meeting warrant request, and 2, to close the special town meeting warrant. Please find the following warrant articles proposed for special town meeting. Article 1 is an appropriation of funds for unpaid bills of a prior year. We are still researching that. The finance director believes she may have one, but we're checking on it. Article 2 is for intra-departmental transfers and/or appropriations for FY17 budget. And Article 3 is the capital and related contracts. I would ask you to go to the back page of your warrant that I gave you. And I have recommendations. The Finance Committee will be meeting tomorrow night. So I'd like to go through what my recommendations would be for those two articles.
I'm sorry, please, excuse me. Through the chair, and when Mary was handing out the warrants, she had mentioned that some language was changed, but we didn't know.
I'll go through it.
I know you're going to go through it all, but I'd like to know what was changed originally. What was changed, which article was changed?
We separate, and again, I'll go through that, but the funding for the 5 firefighters, after meeting with the Finance Committee and talking with them, it appeared that it would be more transparent to take that out of the transfer article and put it into its own article. So that is what has happened. So, and anything else, and Town Council has provided some changes, so things changed up until today. So I will try and go through everything that changed as we've gone through. I don't think you've seen the warrant articles yet, so everything, I think, would be different. So, if I may proceed?
Can I ask you a quick question? On this, as I know you're going to go through it, when you put dollar figures, we have to be very specific, right? We can't say up to the dollar figure.
No, sir. What we do is when I put a dollar figure, it's usually an estimate based on going out for procurement or looking at the state bid list. What happens is, if it's a capital article, it is an amount, and then they purchase their equipment. So let's say it's a car, and it's a police car, and it's $50,000. We put in the capital article. If it comes out to $42,000, then that $8,000 is returned or not used, and then the finance director will close those out.
And is there a minimum dollar value for it to be considered a capital expense?
Generally, it's $10,000, but if it's in someone's, and has a life of 5 or more years, if it would be in a department's budget that would really skew it, like a department that only has $2,000 in its budget and it needs something for $8,000, we might put it on. So there's not, the Board of Selectmen at this point and Finance Committee have been fairly lax, at what?
Is there a way for me to ask to have something added to this list?
Mm-hmm.
If possible, under police, I would like to have added a lockbox for $3,000.
I think we could probably find that within the budget.
That would be awesome. Just for clarification to the rest of the board, we do have a training range for our police department, but it's not a secure location. So every time they go down there, they have to literally, for lack of a better word, schlep everything in and everything out, because they really can't secure it properly and leave it there and not be able to trust that people aren't going to steal it, take it, ruin it. But I'm told by, Officer Smith, that for that price or less, they can get like a steel lockbox, which would enable them to leave a lot of their training equipment actually at the site and not have to bring it in and out every time. I think that would be...
Let me check with the chief.
Thank you.
All right. Rob? Thank you.
Yes, sir. The Water and Sewer Department has asked for a couple of things, transfers in Article 2. So the transfer 2, the Sewer Enterprise Fund salary account, the purpose is to reimburse the salary of, I'm not sure how I ended up with 2 pencils in my hand. Did I steal that from you?
No.
Okay. To reimburse the salary of the water sewer coordinator in the amount of $86,166.14 from the RRFA water superintendent salary. Sewer retained earnings, fund repairs to the RBCs and 1 and 2, and various capital projects in the amount of $117,000 from the sewer capital replacement equipment. And that's actually, I've got to change that around, the sewer enterprise fund, so it's coming out of retained earnings. General insurance, VFIS increase, $32,000 from ambulance fees. VFIS, as you know, is our public safety insurance. Police salaries, the union contract, $38,122, raise and appropriate, and the FY19 conservation services. And I just had a meeting today on this with the conservation agent and the chairman of the Lakes and Ponds. They made this request. It's a lakes, Betham, and I won't say the word right, Bethamir, do you know how to say that?
Joe?
It's a survey.
Bathymetry?
Thank you. It's a survey, and we put aside money in the waterways account from the taxes from boats. This is $7,900. We have $35,000 in it. They would like to use this to do the survey. This is a positive thing because, as you know, we're also doing the MVP grant, and we'll be able to use this as part of our matching and in-kind services.
Oh, nice.
Very good.
Article 3, which is our capital article. The fire has asked to replace their Ford Expedition vehicle, and I have to confirm on with what he's trading that in for. And the amount is $39,282 from free cash. Highway is requesting a one-ton dump truck, $54,700 from free cash. He's also asking for a F-250 pickup, regular cab, in the amount of $38,000 from free cash. And he's wanting to replace his Freightliner 108 SD conventional chassis central hydraulic system plow hitch with a 10-foot chassis mounted sander for $152,000 from free cash. He hasn't asked for a couple of things for a couple of years, so he's loaded up and he's made his apologies, but that is what he needs now. He has informed us that he's had some breakdowns through this winter, so it's time to replace these.
I've talked with him.
Police cruiser replacement 2 for $108,000 from free cash, and the traffic enforcement vehicle for $42,000 from free cash. Technology Committee, computer network replacement, $25,000 from free cash. That is to keep us up to date. Inspectional services, the four-wheel drive truck for $30,000 free cash. And as you know, the building commissioner has been here, and you have recommended that he change that vehicle out.
That's, what he's getting is an F-150 with the slight extended cab. He's getting a very good price on it because it's a leftover.
Just $30,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's done his homework on it. He's not requiring, the other thing that drives that number up when you see it for highway and stuff is he's not requiring any special lighting package on it, and he's not asking for a special color. So in other words, he's just getting, fleet white or fleet red, whatever they have.
Okay.
So.
And if it's okay, I'd like to go to Article 9, jump down to that, and just talk about the finances so that I can just finish going through here, and then I'll go back to Article 2 and 3.
Can I interrupt for half a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I know I had read in an earlier memo that the fire department was going to be seeking to purchase another engine to replace one that was outdated.
Yes, they had that in their 5-year capital plan. They've moved that down and said that for this year, their priority is having the town approve the 5 firefighters.
Okay, which brings us to the next section. Okay, thank you
Yes.
very much for that.
So in Article 9, originally in Article 2, we had the fire salaries to extend for 6 months. As you remember, town meeting had voted to approve 4 firefighters. And then within weeks after town meeting, the fire department announced that they had received a grant for 9 firefighters. It was agreed that we would accept the grant for 9. The chief at the time said if we don't get the grant again, that they would let those 5 go. The chief now has reviewed and has made a good case that the ambulance funds are increasing. We'll be able to add that in, and it's a permanent increase. So he's asking to keep the 5 firefighters. Originally, I had put it into Article 2 as just a transfer to get us to the end of the 6 months. I had a conversation with the Finance Committee, and it was decided that for transparency's sake and so that we would know where we're going next year, it would make sense to have the conversation with town meeting, whether or not they support the additional 5 firefighters. If they do, then what happens is when we start doing the budget for next year, that $260,000, which is what I think the finance director has calculated additional, then that $260,000 will be an automatic, that will go into the budget, and then we'll see what we have left.
And is this to hire additional or just to pay for the ones we
Pay for
have?
salary.
So the grant
Pay for
goes.
salary for the ones
Right.
we have, we're not hiring more.
So the grant doesn't end until the next 6 months, for 6 months. So
Yep.
what we need to do is to fund that last 6 months.
Okay,
So that's what the 130 is. It's just funding those 5 for the end of the 6 months, for the end of the year.
very good.
Mr. Chair.
David?
So a question on this. So you're saying that the funding is to continue the payments, the salaries for these firefighters for the 6 months. And I'm getting a little confused because you just said that the grant continued for another 6 months. So if the grant is still in place.
I'm sorry, the grant ends 6 months before the end of the year.
Okay, so two comments, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to keeping the firefighters on, but one is an accountability issue. So fire chief came before, regardless of who, the fire chief came before this board and made several statements. The first of which was this wouldn't cost the town anything, it's paid for by a grant. And then at the end of the grant, the town could either A, end the employment of those 5 firefighters, which at the time was the way the board was leaning, because we were also told that the grant could be reapplied for. So that brings me to my question, if the grant is ending, A, did we reapply for the grant, and what was the response? If we didn't reapply for the grant, why didn't we do that, knowing that this grant was ending?
The answer to that is yes, we did reapply, and we won't know before town meeting.
So what happens if we appropriate the funds for the 5 firefighters and then find out we get the grant?
Well, right now, you're only appropriating to the end of the year, but you're going to have the conversation, if we don't get the grant, then would the town meeting be willing to add the 5 firefighters? Let me skip down to that language so that you can, and the people at home can see exactly what we've got. So Article 9 says, fully fund additional 5 firefighters as grant ends, to see if the town will vote to authorize the fire chief pursuant to his authority under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Sections 42, 43, and 44, the provisions of which Charlton Town Meeting accepted by May 26 in 1931 vote, and in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, to appoint 5 firefighters as permanent employees when a SAFER grant, and the SAFER stands for Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response, grant ends on January 8, 2019, or take any other action thereon. So in the motion would be to approve this article in the amount of $130,000 to the end of the year.
So if we do find out that we get approval for the grant, when would that go into effect? Not until after the end of the year or immediately?
If we were approved for the grant would substitute the funding, and this funding would just go back to free cash, it wouldn't be used.
But if we don't, Mr. Chair, if we
Go
don't get it, this locks them into permanent employee status?
For 6
months. For 6 months. There's a 6-month period on Article 9, or is this indefinitely?
I think this is indefinitely. So whether you get the grant or not, it's asking you, will you take on those 5 firefighters? If we get the grant, then the grant will fund them for the 2 years. If we don't get the grant, then basically you're getting direction from the town meeting to hire these 5 firefighters.
And so just to clarify that, for this article, I would feel more comfortable voting on extending it to 6 months, transferring it from apparently money that we already have through ambulance receipts, and then come May town meeting, once we know if we get the grant, to make the decision to make it permanent or not when we have a clear idea of our permanent funding source.
I agree with Mr. Safarowicz.
Though that is a choice. What we're trying to do is so that, to have a smooth transition when we start the budget season next year, because we won't know. So you can go either way.
Well, if we simply won't know our financial condition,
Mhm.
that's a concern. And to decide now whether something's permanent or not for 6 months down the road, I think is another concern. You know, if we're looking just to fund and buy 6 months, it's a lot of money as it is, but that gives us time to keep these firefighters employed, benefit the town, and see if we can get the grant. Then we should cross that bridge first, and then be able to make that decision when we know what the outcome is, whether this would be a permanent solution or not.
Okay, Karen?
I have more of a procedural question. Has it been past practice to review the warrant articles actually in conjunction with, having Finance Committee present, so they could answer some of the financial questions we may have? For instance, my belief is free cash was just certified, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so we have there's 1.3 million free cash that was certified, is that correct? I'm doing this from memory, so I might be wrong. Yes.
No, it's on your sheet at the bottom.
I didn't
And
get
I'm
there
going
yet.
to go through that.
Okay. But that's good to know, I think, ahead of time. And going back to my original question, it just, sometimes I think it makes sense to collaborate with the FinCom, which is Finance Committee, when we're discussing the warrant articles because of the financial nature of the questions.
That's a very good point, and I plan on taking this to the Finance Committee tomorrow night. Generally, what I'll do is I'll bring my recommendations to the Board of Selectmen first. You'll take a look at them if you want to change things, because you are the policymakers. And then I will take that and you will forward that to the Finance Committee. Other times, the boards have gotten together and had joint meetings, and you've let the Finance Committee kind of make those decisions.
Again, through the chair, it almost seems a little, for lack of a better term at the moment, backwards. I really want to base decision on knowing the people who are entrenched in who are very familiar with the financial end of things. I know we're the overseers and the policymakers, but I think we really, I don't know, maybe in the future I would ask us to consider having a joint meeting, so, is that a, yes?
That's just perfect, actually, and I hope that, what a great segue. I have got...
Just a recommendation.
Wait a minute.
Fresh
Could I
eyes.
interrupt this just 1 second, because Mr. Borowski looks like he has something that he wants to share with us.
Is he jumping out of his chair?
He was.
I'm happy to defer up to you guys.
Okay. All right.
So what I am passing out is the Finance Committee is going through their goals and objectives. And one of their goals is to meet with the Board of Selectmen at budget time. I think it's at budget time more than this. The reason you're getting this now is because I have to make a recommendation to them tomorrow night, and I would like to float that by you and get your thoughts tonight. This, again, this is not getting posted. We still have until October 15th till we go to get the motions. But I want to run it by you and tell you where I'm going. You don't need to take any action on it.
Okay.
But if you see these goals and objectives, this is what the Finance Committee is looking at. And they are wanting to meet with you at least maybe twice a year.
We can review it later.
Okay, so,
Let's get through these.
all right, so if I can continue? So then, if you look at the bottom of this page, so free cash has been certified in the amount of $1,138,670. Stabilization, present balance is $613,873. The capital that I proposed in this is $489,382. Leaving for a transfer to the stabilization fund in the amount of $649,288, which would leave us a final stabilization fund amount of $1,263,161, which is within the target of what the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee have been asking that the stabilization fund. Yes.
What is the full budget?
What full budget?
What's the amount of the total budget right now?
Our annual budget?
Yeah.
24?
Almost 30. It depends on if you're including the the enterprise funds or not. I don't have that exactly.
I'm just wondering what percentage the stabilization fund is of the total budget.
Yeah.
27?
Is it, do we know?
26 something.
What's the, but the percentage?
But, so.
So we have approximately 5% of the budget and
5%.
5% in stabilization?
This is the lowest that we've, I think, ever had stabilization.
And I know
It shouldn't
audit,
stay that low.
and auditors typically recommend what the lowest should be, and it's usually, I know when I was on school committee, I believe it was around 5%. Does that still hold
Yeah.
true?
10% is what you'll see that the finance committee has in their goals.
Yeah, 10% is a good amount, so we're about halfway there.
Yeah, it's 10% of the, right now it's 5% of the total budget and about 10% of our non-school budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Now,
Which
historically,
is where you want to be.
Right, of the general fund.
10% of the general budget.
yeah, and then just historically, the board has never even wanted to ever go below 1.4, even in the tightest of times.
Right.
Recently,
Right.
we've had no choice, and we've gone well below the
We're trying to build
1.4.
back up again.
And the 1.26 gets us at least moving back to that minimum
Right.
threshold, and then hopefully go beyond that, but at least we're moving in the right direction.
Again, something for our meeting on goals and objectives next
I
week.
think through the goodness of the voters, when they pass the override for the school committee, for the schools, I think that is going to help our finances on the town side quite a bit, okay? I think so. We're seeing a positive trend, and I think that that's going to continue.
And just a quick question, what is our bond, I know our bond rating is good, but I don't remember what it is exactly.
I think it's a double A plus,
Double A.
but I'll.
And the highest is triple? Double A, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so back to the warrant. So this is what I plan on presenting to the finance committee as my recommendations tomorrow night.
Okay.
But you're going to ask about $3,000.
I will talk with the chief about the $3,000. He should have that actually in his budget, but I'll have the conversation with him.
Thank you.
So, down to Article 4 is transfer to and from stabilization fund, so the 600,049,288 would be transferred, along with the general one that you always do with the 70,000 from Millennium that goes in and goes back out. Acquisition of easements needed for the water line, culvert repair, replacement, et cetera, at 87 Old Worcester Road as part of the ExxonMobil water line extension. That is proposed by the Water Sewer Commission. Article 6 and 7 are Water Sewer Commission. 6 is to create a water stabilization fund. And then in the motion, there will also be a transfer of money so that they will put money into both of those. And Article 7 will create a sewer stabilization fund. The sewer superintendent, water sewer superintendent has informed me that they would like to kind of mirror the way the general budget works so that they have a stabilization and they transfer their retained earnings over to that, leaving a modest amount in case they run short during the year. Article 8 is the personnel bylaw amendment, classification plan update. The planning board met, and they are recommending that to delete from.
Personnel board.
Yes, thank you, personnel board.
Okay.
I had planner on my mind. By deleting therefore the following positions in the grade listed, N7 is the director of assessing, N7 is the town planner, and N7 the building commissioner, and by adding thereto the following positions to grades listed, N6 is the IT technician, N8 is the director of assessing, N8 the planner, N8 the building commissioner. Basically, they are recommending the director of assessing, the town planner, and the building commissioner be moved up one classification, and we're adding the IT technician in. Article 9 is fully funding additional 5 firefighters as the grant ends. Article 10 is local tax, local gas tax. As you know, you had voted, I think it was in special meeting in 2016 to approve that. It went to the legislature. There was talk at the legislature about making an optional tax, and they kind of melded it into an ominous
Omnibus.
bill. Thank you.
Omnibus,
Omnibus.
yes.
Omnibus.
Yes, sorry, an ominous bill.
That's a kill, right?
Bill, it didn't make it out of committee at this point. There's still some hope that it might come out. But for Charlton, the timing ran out, so we just need to revote it.
Okay. Are there any
To
big
keep-
players that are interested in that?
I have had a couple of calls from some towns that are thinking of putting it on there, so if more towns start to put it on, there'll be a little more, I don't want to say pressure, but more talk. Article 11 is the zoning bylaw amendment for marijuana establishments. As you said, they are changing it, and I'm not going to try to even tell you what they're doing, but the things that I understand they're doing would be to regulate all future marijuana establishments to the IG, take them out of agriculture. The special permit is there, and they have eliminated the language that the Attorney General said to strike. They are meeting tomorrow night, and they will have final language for us
Could I
on there.
interrupt for just 1 second? I believe this is what Mr. Borowski wanted.
Bill Borowski, 69 Haggerty Road. Again, thank you for the indulgence. I'll make this very brief. I suppose, based upon my prior comments, I'm just looking for some clarification. I'm reviewing the minutes for my own sanity from August 28th, and again, pardon the paraphrase, and again, this will be brief. Attorney Silverstein, is it Stein or Steen, forgive me? Steen, sorry. Attorney Silverstein has addressed some of these questions. After speaking to him and considering residents' concerns, she, Ms. Craver, would recommend the following course of action. Place a marijuana zoning bylaw article to rescind the present marijuana zoning bylaw and replace it with a zoning marijuana ban on the October town meeting. This will eliminate and address the question of liability to the town for developers who already have host agreements. Part 2, also place the planning board's marijuana zoning bylaw revisions on the October town meeting following the ban article. This way, if the ban fails at either the October town meeting or at the ballot, the present marijuana will be revised per the recommendation of the planning board. Language could be inserted which will nullify this vote if the ban is successful in both the town meeting and election. Following up to that,
Can I,
Mr. Savarovich would like to make a motion to put the zoning ban on the October town meeting, seconded by Ms. Noble. The board called a vote on motion. Motion passes. So this board made a motion to pass a ban, not to pass a ban, to place a ban on the October town meeting, which was my assumption when I addressed you tonight. And as far as I know, at your last meeting, there was no discussion about rescinding that vote.
So we will allow Ms. Craver to speak.
Of course, please, thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm going to finish where I was because
of
this
course,
comes up as I move forward. Thank you. So Article 12 is a petition that we received, and as you know, petitions, this petition was reviewed by the town clerk, and the correct number of signatures was certified. It is on exactly as it was submitted, which is the law. And this is, I don't know, I believe the planning board's still making changes to theirs. The petition, I believe that special counsel has some information on this petition. I'll read it for the people at home, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. Let me find it. Citizen petition article, general bylaw, to see if the town will vote to amend the town's general bylaw by adding a new chapter and section that would provide as follows, and to further amend the table of contents to add the said chapter and section. Chapter 157, marijuana, Section 157-4, host agreement. Selectmen shall comply with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 94G, and obtain town meeting approval of the terms of any host agreement pursuant to General Law, Chapter 94G, prior to signing. Any General Law, Chapter 94G, host agreement previously signed by the Board of Selectmen which does not comply with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 3D, is declared null and void, or take any other action relative thereto. This general bylaw, this is in the petition, this general bylaw will protect the town of Charlton from any host agreements which do not comply with the Massachusetts state law. And I would ask Attorney Goldstein to just opine on that. Silverstein. Oh, what's that up? Freudian
That
slip.
happens all the time.
Platinum Steen.
There you go.
Good evening. Jonathan
Hello.
Silverstein, Special Counsel. So I was asked to look at this petition article, which came in, I want to say, on Thursday of last week. So as I see it, this article, this proposed bylaw would do two things. Prospectively, it requires a town meeting vote to approve any host community agreement with a marijuana establishment under Chapter 94G prior to execution. And secondly, it would purport to declare null and void previously executed host community agreements that, in the words of the article, do not comply with the statute. So there are a few issues I see with this bylaw that, as we've discussed earlier in my prior meetings with the board, the Attorney General is generally loath to reject bylaws adopted by a town meeting. They may point out potential infirmities, but unless there's a direct conflict with statute or constitutional provision, they'll point those potential infirmities out and say, but the limited scope of our review is such that we're not going to take it upon ourselves to declare a bylaw invalid. In this case, I think there's a decent chance, I wouldn't pretend to predict what would happen, but I think there's a decent chance that the Attorney General's office would disapprove this bylaw. First of all, as to that, the first piece of it that prospectively requires a town meeting vote for any, prior to execution of any host community agreement, I have a concern that the Attorney General might see two problems with that. Number one, I think it's potentially could be deemed as an infringement by the legislative branch of government in town, the town meeting, of the executive authority of the Board of Selectmen, which is the contracting authority of the town. Now, it's not uncommon to have bylaw provisions that relate to, that place limitations on contracting authority when it involves the expenditure of funds, because the town meeting, as the legislative body, is the appropriating authority. Host community agreements don't involve the expenditure of funds, they involve receipt of funds, and so I think the AG may view it as a legislative overreach for town meeting to purport to restrict the Board of Selectmen's authority to enter into host community agreements. The second issue is, as you'll recall, the AG did strike an amendment that was made on town meeting floor to Article 27 that established the marijuana bylaw. And the basis for that was that the Attorney General viewed that as an unreasonably impracticable limitation to put on marijuana establishments. Given the timelines that are involved with seeking licensure from the Cannabis Control Commission, there's a chance that the Attorney General could view a requirement that, where normally you would go to Board of Selectmen and you would go through that process, negotiate the agreement and execute it. I think there's a chance the AG could view that as a unreasonably impracticable infringement on the ability of marijuana establishments to get through the host community agreement process if they have to wait for a town meeting, which, you know, could be called as a special town meeting, but wouldn't necessarily have to be. The second piece of the bylaw, the proposed bylaw, I think is more problematic. For town meeting to take it on itself, A, to adjudicate what is and is not a violation of state law, and B, to declare a previously executed contract null and void, I think is beyond town meeting's authority. They're not an adjudicator of what is valid under state law. And there's what's called the Contracts Clause of the United States Constitution, which says that the government shall not pass any law that infringes upon any contract. So I do have a particular concern about that second piece of the proposed bylaw, that the AG may view that as of concern under the Contracts Clause. I can get into at great length why the host community agreements executed by this board to date, in my view, do not violate the statute. I don't know that we need to, because I don't think that's really properly before town meeting, but I'd be happy to summarize that if the board's inclined to hear it. I have provided the board with comments that my office made to the Cannabis Control Commission when it was considering amending its guidance regarding host community agreements that lays out a number of those issues, not all of them, but a number of them. That's a matter of public record. But I don't believe that any of the host community agreements executed to date are in violation of Chapter 94G, Section 3D. So that's a quick summary of the issues I see with this bylaw.
That is quick.
Yes.
I think you paid that
Can I,
Absolutely.
may I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Thank you. So first, I want to thank Attorney Silverstein for his comments, and I think you bring up some very valid concerns. But I go back to, with all due respect, what our role is here. The reality is you've given us, not to the best of your ability, what may be, so hypothetical outcomes. We do not know for a fact that any of this may come to fruition, correct?
Absolutely
Right.
true. And sorry, I don't want to cut you off. All of this is just informational because the board is obligated to put this on the warrant, so.
And that's your, but we are, I thank you, because I do think we are obligated to put this on the warrant.
Absolutely.
I'm just hoping we're
Oh, yeah,
not,
we
we're not going to
absolutely
have.
have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
This is
No, no, no.
just background.
Okay.
We absolutely have to put this on the warrant.
I thought we
I
may
was
be
gonna ask the
considering
same-
not putting this,
No,
because
I
I
was
think
gonna
that would
ask the
be.
same question, Karen, so.
Okay, all
No, no,
right.
we absolutely have to put this on the warrant.
Because again, the citizens have gone through everything that they need to do legally, and not to put this on the ballot would just be.
Through-
I think I
Through
said
the
when
chair.
I
me.
started that this was a petition that had the signatures and that was on the warrant.
Okay.
And that
Yeah.
the attorney was just going to
So-
give you
It- it-
Ms.
Yes.
Noble first,
Yep.
then I'll go, I see Mr. Borowski has
Oh,
another
no, I'm sorry,
question.
I'm just,
No? Oh, okay.
I'm just
Okay.
fidgeting, I'm sorry.
Okay, because
Oh,
I got
okay,
somebody
just-
behind me
okay.
that wants to
So-
ask a question. So Ms. Noble first, go ahead, Deb.
So when I read this, it clearly violated the Contracts Clause of the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. It also seeks to create, in my understanding, an ex post facto law, which is also addressed in the Constitution. So when this goes for a vote, and it absolutely will go for a vote at town meeting, we can't stop that, the AG's office is going to have to get it and review it for constitutionality, am I correct?
That's right.
Okay. And if they find it unconstitutional, is it stricken?
Yeah, they'll simply, they would, if they so found, simply disapprove the bylaw.
Right, so we had over 100 people sign a petition to submit an article for town meeting that is unconstitutional on its face.
Arguably.
That is
I mean,
arguably, that is
I
that.
hate to be too.
I
definitive 'cause
know,
I'm a
you're an
lawyer,
attorney,
but-
I got it. So we did have over 100 residents in town sign a petition that is arguably unconstitutional on its face. Is that correct?
But through the chair,
Okay.
may I make one more?
Okay, so
Please.
one second.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
Noreen
problem.
Johnson-Smith, Dresser Hill Road. I don't think we have any constitutional lawyers in the room right now, unless I'm mistaken.
No, absolutely
Okay, so
not.
including Attorney Silverstein, thank you very much.
I'm a constitutional.
You are a constitutional lawyer. Well, forgive me. Thank you. So,
If the definition of a constitutional law is litigating numerous cases involving application, interpretation of the Constitution.
Yes.
That would be
Okay, thank you. So you've provided that there's a decent chance that there may be issues raised by the Attorney General with the ballot question, which I did sign as well, and hope that my signature was counted as valid. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things that were said from a slightly different perspective, that knowing that this is going on to the town meeting warrant anyways, the Cannabis Control Commission issued a clarification and guidance to the Mass Municipal Association, which you probably have seen at least on some level, clarifying in the host agreements the fees that can be charged of marijuana businesses who come to town, and that these are not revenue opportunities for the town. And to clarify that if they are looked at as revenue opportunities for the town, and the towns overcharge the businesses for what they're coming to town to do, those potentially could be litigated as invalid contracts. So it was clear in the guidance that came through the Mass Municipal Association that host agreements have to have a budget that shows that these impact fees are actually related to the community impact of the business that's siting itself in town, and have a related budget with budgetary items that justify the dollar amount that's included in the host agreement. So I would just dispute the statement that you made that host agreements don't involve expenditures of funds only, receipt of funds, when in fact it involves both expenditure of funds and a receipt of funds. And I would suggest that those are the intent behind the question that was forwarded in the form of a petition was for transparency, that this is potential growth of the town budget in an unplanned way due to the presence of a new business that has exorbitant needs for energy and other things, and that the taxpayers have a right to know about those expenses as well as what may be offsets in terms of a community impact fee. And I think the intention was transparency among the voters. So I would like to just chime in from the other side. Secondarily, I've spoken with with two state senators in this region who have both stated that the intention from the state legislature was exceptionally clear. This is a local decision. This is not intended to be a state decision and state intervention and some other higher body making decisions for the towns. The state legislature put their hands up and backed off once the vote had been made and said this is for the towns to decide. So I think the spirit of the petition that you received was about transparency and voter engagement in what is an issue that clearly concerns a lot of people in town.
Okay.
Could I also ask a question?
Sure.
So I'm sorry I missed the open forum portion of the meeting. I was still at work. There was previously a posting of a marijuana business that had proposed to site on Dresser Hill Road, and that was going to be considered at this meeting. And I checked with my husband, who was here, and he said that that was not discussed at all. So I was just wondering if you could, for the record of the people at home as well, clarify what the status of that proposal was.
Yes. It was breathe-free. It was supposed to be on a piece of land out in back of Charlton Furniture. That's the one you're referring to?
And behind my neighbors' houses, yes.
They have notified us that they are going to another town.
Okay.
So it was withdrawn. I sent an email to the board stating I was pulling it off because they were not going to pursue.
Thank you for sharing that, because I know I have a lot of neighbors who watch these meetings who can't get here, but they were also curious about what was happening with that because no one had been notified in the neighborhood. Yes.
I did email back and forth with a resident in that neighborhood over the weekend.
Yes. I'm aware of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I let her know the outcome.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
aware of that. We do
Okay.
talk to each other, but.
Okay, good,
you
so
know,
I'm just glad that, you
Yeah.
know, you guys talked. So, yeah, I let her know over the weekend so that it would ease her mind.
So I think the concern with that particular example is that any grower, distributor, manufacturer could propose to drop themselves anywhere in town at any time, and any neighborhood could go through the exact same conversations and concerns that we went through of, here we are again. So I think that's the intent of having these host agreements be a public discussion.
I think Karen was first.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Just, I want to thank her for bringing that up. I actually had that under old business because of course, I wasn't at the September 11th meeting. And then I found out through communications that Breathe Free had pulled out. So this is, again, more procedural. When residents or petitioners bring forth something like warrant, the language for a warrant article, I know other towns do this. If we know, other towns actually provide assistance to the citizens because everyone benefits. Instead of, if we know up front that they're missing certain language, it's in everyone's best interest to actually be proactive and assist them. So when it does move forward, the people at the town meeting voting on this, we're not wasting time,
So-
you know, and
so
we're
I-
actually, you know.
I have something to say to that, okay?
Okay.
And we have, okay? The first one was when a group of people came forward and I want to say it was 2016, and it was Ms. Castigian, and I forgot the other people involved, but they wanted to do something on marijuana, and we ended up, town council actually helped them. And where the wheels fell off that bus was then the night of town meeting, they tried to move it forward on the agenda, and town meeting decided that they didn't want to move it forward on the agenda, so everybody that knew what was going on with the article, I won't say everybody, but people didn't step up to the mic, and then a gentleman that lives over near me ended up getting up and proposing a motion, which was not the motion, I believe, that was written in the thing. And that's where the wheels on the bus fell off, that portion of it. But we have provided counsel on many different things, zoning articles and things like that. Now, did I know that this was coming forward? Absolutely not. This was just sort of like dropped in at the town clerk with the signatures on it. So if you want help with doing something like this, before you start the petition, you have to come and get some guidance on what you want to do and how you want to do it.
So,
And sometimes people do it that way because they don't want our, they don't want our input, they don't want to hear what we have to say, you know, on this. But that's neither here nor there.
I guess I look at it as a lack of communication, and many people in the general public, they really don't understand what to do, what the procedures are, and as people who represent the citizens, I think it's important, again, with policy, and I do know a lot about policy development, that we have policies that help residents to understand what to do if X happens, or if you're going to move forward with this, you know, what you can do.
Go ahead, Mr. Singer.
Just with all due respect to everybody here, we're no longer talking about this.
Yeah, I know.
We have a very bad habit, I'm going to do this as respectfully as I can,
Yep.
of getting off track.
Yep.
During a meeting that should have ended at 8:30 into a meeting that ends at 11:30.
What are you looking at?
I know, but the point is,
He's right.
there are people in those empty chairs
You are correct.
who have their own lives to live and they want us to conduct the town's
And-
business. And a lot of the conversation we've had was, tonight was not the place, town meeting was the place for a lot of those conversations, and some of these are for off-meeting nights, which just serves to extend this meeting, making them all sit here longer than necessary, them sit here longer than necessary, and us sit here longer than necessary trying to conduct the town's business.
I'm trying to be open and transparent. So anyway.
And I thought it was very informative, Mr. Singer.
It is, but
Come
so
on. Informative is fine
with that in mind.
We can have that informative
with-
discussion
With that in
when
mind,
it's on
we
the
have to
agenda.
do one thing. We have to finish this portion of it up at 9:30, or before 9:30. Drew has asked us to take a little bit of a break because he's got to change the DVD, I believe, since we're not live. So, Ms. Craver,
Yes, sir.
what do we have to do next?
Sorry for making you wait. Okay, you also have a placeholder. It's a zoning bylaw ban. I have heard you may not want this article, as it appears residents are saying they want marijuana facilities to not be cited in AG zones, and it appears the planning board revisions will address those concerns. You also have a ballot vote for a ban scheduled already. I have attached the draft warrant and a capital plan for your review. The warrant will be posted next Monday, October 1st. We were notified on September 5th, 2018, that free cash was certified in the amount of, in the general fund of $1,300,000, and I'm not even going to go through those because I've already gone through them. The Finance Committee met with the departments already and are in the process of reviewing their financial requests. You are scheduled to close the warrant tonight. I request that your vote will include pending confirmation of all needed language and review by Finance Committee and Town Council.
Okay, so. Any discussion, further discussion, comments before we put this to a vote?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd still like a response, quite honestly, because I'm still confused.
Well, I think, Bill, what we just heard from the town administrator, because there are two different other warrant articles on here about zoning,
There's only one.
No, there's the petition article also
Right.
impacts the zoning.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but you had a motion on August 28th, and I left that meeting knowing it was a unanimous motion made that you were going to place a marijuana ban on it. And I spoke to you earlier this evening about this very nature, about a procedural nuance with Attorney Silverstein, and not one member of the board made any reference to the fact that it appears that there was a rescission, and if there were a rescission, when was that vote? Because
there is no rescission yet.
all right, but
So-
but you made a motion, so what's
So
happening?
we have to talk about this now. That's what we're doing.
But if I didn't bring this
Mr.
up,
Chair.
would you have spoken about it?
Mr. Chair,
It's in here.
Go ahead.
as it was just brought up in the memo, in the new, in the agenda, I would still like to see the zoning bylaw ban be included on the town meeting warrant,
That's what
yeah, as we voted on.
Okay. So with that in place, is there anything that we have to hear from town council on this?
Well, that
I would
complicates the discussion
recommend-
from before, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was the exact catalyst of me speaking before around putting it to November, and no one on the board spoke up to say that it was even up for discussion. I mean, Mr. Chairman, it boggles my mind procedurally what has occurred tonight.
So, Bill, we're going to continue with our business right now, if you don't mind, okay? We
But
are town council.
I do mind.
Well, you're going to have to mind because the chair's moving forward with listening to the attorney, okay?
I might be able to just clarify a
Please,
little bit.
thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So, as I understood the discussion on SPWAC's motion to reconsider putting the general bylaw ban on the May warrant, that related to the general bylaw passed as Article 2 at the August 1st special town meeting. And the board's decision to put that general bylaw ban on the May town election, and her request that that be reconsidered and put on the November, on the special election in November. And that was the context of that discussion, which didn't relate to any proposed zoning bylaw ban. And I think it was a little confusing, and I don't want to speak for the members of the board, but I think they thought you were still talking about the general bylaw ban.
I said specifically.
Until towards the end.
I said specifically I was not talking about the general bylaw ban.
Well, you said let's put it aside, and then, but I don't want to speak for them, but I think,
But I can speak for myself.
I was a
and
little
say
bit
that-
confused.
That I mentioned, and we can read back the minutes, that my discussion was predicated on the assumption that there was a zoning bylaw ban in October, which was voted on by this board on August 28th, and nobody said a word.
We didn't vote on anything.
But that wasn't part,
You voted on August 28th to proceed with it. It was.
they did.
it's in
If I
your
could
minutes.
just, I'm just trying to clarify, because that was in the context of a discussion about very specific